Chapter 640. After receiving the invitation, Jiang Hai opened it in front of her. The invitation was a pink envelope with a golden pattern. There was something gilded on it that Jiang Hai didn't know. It was printed with a string of English words, Victoria's Secret. Scott of Victoria. Looking at the string of English words, Jiang Hai slowly read it out loud. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Selena Gomez couldn't help but roll her eyes at him. Then she clicked on the invitation. This is Victoria's Secret. Selena Gomez looked at Jiang Hai and said seriously. I know, a company that sells vests. No wonder you're dressed like this. Glancing at the thing, Jiang Hai put it back in the invitation. He had heard of this brand before. Well, he had only heard of it. Why would a man ask about the brand of women's vests when he had nothing to do? He's not a pervert. Although you're right, why do I feel that these words coming out of your mouth are so low class? But I like it, hee hee. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Selena Gomez shook her head proudly and then said with a smile. I was invited by them as this year's guest singer. I don't have to walk the runway, but I have to wear a little, cool. You know, those people don't come here to look at down jackets. Haha, what do you want to drink? I'll get it. Looking at Jiang Hai's helpless expression, Selena Gomez couldn't help but smile. Then she wisely changed the topic. Beer. I don't like to drink anything else. Jiang Hai shrugged and said helplessly. This is Selena Gomez's career. He has no right to interfere. This is also because his relationship with Selena Gomez is somewhat similar to Per Walton's. Something did happen between them, and their relationship is a bit vague, but Jiang Hai really has no right to interfere with the other party. If the other party was the female lead and dared to dress like this, Jiang Hai would scold her to death. Well, if she dressed like this in front of Jiang Hai, it would be pretty good, but the problem now is that it seems that Jiang Hai has a bigger problem. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Selena Gomez also smiled and left here. She went to the side to get a beer, but less than 10 seconds after she left, a white woman walked over. This woman is indeed very beautiful. She has a fairy-like aura on her body, and she is also wearing very cool clothes. After walking in front of Jiang Hai, she sat directly in front of Selena Gomez. Hi, hello. Seeing her sit down, Jiang Hai was somewhat embarrassed, but she first greeted Jiang Hai in advance. Hello. After responding, Jiang Hai began to look for Selena Gomez in the crowd. He was a little insecure. My name is Ally Golding, a good friend of Selena Gomez and one of the resident singers this time. I heard Selena Gomez mention you. Nice to meet you. Seeing Jiang Hai's slightly impolite behavior, the other party didn't care. Instead, she smiled and said to Jiang Hai, then she reached out her hand. Jiang Hai also shook her hand, but Jiang Hai really didn't know who she was. Oh, hello, I've heard your song. Nice to meet you, nice to meet you. Although Jiang Hai didn't know who she was, she said that she was a resident singer, so she should be a singer, so Jiang Hai said with a little guilty conscience. You've heard my song? Sing a song for me? But after hearing Jiang Hai's words, the woman was very curious. She couldn't help but raise her eyebrows and ask Jiang Hai. This time, Jiang Hai was Spartan. How would he know who this woman was? In an instant, Jiang Hai felt that his embarrassment was about to recur. What the hell is this? This is too embarrassing. Okay, Ally, I told you before, my boyfriend doesn't listen to our music. But just when Jiang Hai was at his most awkward, Selena Gomez walked over with a smile and half a bottle of beer in her hand. The beer here was the 330 milliliters, very small bottles, so 6 bottles together didn't look very big. She put down the beer and opened 3 bottles directly. Jiang Hai had one, she had one, and she handed one to the woman. I know, but he just said that he heard my song, so I'm also very curious. After taking the beer, Ally Golding also said with a smile. Okay, don't say that you don't know this is Eastern courtesy. Selena Gomez rolled her eyes and said with a helpless expression. Hey sisters, we're here. Just as Selena Gomez was talking, the door of the room suddenly opened again. Then, a beautiful woman with lips that looked like she had just eaten walked in with 2 young but very youthful and beautiful girls. When Selena Gomez saw the 3 of them, she couldn't help but frown. Did you call them? Seeing the 3 people who walked in, Selena Gomez's expression was a little unpleasant. Come on, that's just a rumor. You can't just disappear because of a scumbag. Seeing Selena Gomez's unpleasant face, Ally Golding said with some helplessness. Hearing her words, Selena Gomez couldn't help but be silent. But at this moment, the three people who came in also greeted everyone in the room and saw Jong Hai and the other two sitting here. Well, actually, they ignored Jong Hai and only saw Selena Gomez and Ally Golding. Hey, Ally, Selena. We haven't hung out together for a while, right? The woman walked over and put one hand on Ally Golding's shoulder and the other hand on Selena Gomez's shoulder. Her words were somewhat apologetic to Selena Gomez. Hearing her taking the initiative to express goodwill, Selena Gomez didn't know how to respond. Hey, Taylor, you're late. Come, let me introduce you. This is Jong Hai, Selena's boyfriend. Jong, this is Taylor Swift, a good friend of mine and Selena's. Seeing that the atmosphere was a little awkward, Ally Golding couldn't help but speak with a smile. After hearing her words, Jong Hai also stood up. Because he heard Selena's words and knew that she and Taylor didn't get along, Jong Hai didn't show too much enthusiasm. He just smiled and nodded as a greeting. As for who this woman was, Jong Hai could only say that he didn't care about the American entertainment industry. If you were talking about an NBA star, he probably knew, but if it was a Hollywood or Grammy-winning actress, Jong Hai really didn't know. Jong Hai? Soaring Dragon Manor? Taylor Swift looked at Jong Hai, narrowed her eyes and asked softly. It's me. However, Jong Hai didn't expect her to recognize him. It was a little surprising. Excuse me, Selena, I think we need to talk. Ellie, come too. Taylor Swift smiled apologetically at Jong Hai. Taylor Swift forcefully pulled Selena and gave Ellie a look. Then the three women walked to a corner in the distance. As soon as they reached the corner, Taylor Swift's face became gloomy. Selena, are you crazy? That guy is your boyfriend? A few days ago, he was Walton's man. Taylor Swift pointed at Jong Hai and said angrily. Hearing her words, Ally Golding couldn't help but be stunned. Wait a minute. Taylor, Walton? That person from the Walmart group? What does this have to do with her? Ellie Golding extended her hand and stopped Taylor Swift from continuing. Then she asked curiously, Don't worry about it. Ellie, this news has spread in the upper class, just a few days ago. Taylor Swift sighed as she looked at Ellie Golding, and then told her about what happened at the Hilton Hotel a few days ago. I know, in fact, I'm not his real girlfriend, we are just in that kind of relationship. But after hearing Taylor Swift's words, Selena Gomez shrugged and said indifferently. After hearing her words, the two women were shocked. Oh my God, Selena, are you crazy? You are just one of that guy's lovers? Oh my God, I think that guy looks quite honest, but I didn't expect him to be such a person. Selena, you have to break up with him quickly. Ally Golding looked at Selena Gomez and said seriously. She really didn't expect Jong Hai to be such a person. Selena, Justin is a scumbag. I've never thought of using him to cause you any harm. If I did, I'll apologize to you now. But you can't do this. Your taste in men is really terrible. Taylor Swift looked at Selena Gomez and said seriously. The relationship between them was originally very close, but then something bad happened because of Justin Bieber. Since then, the relationship between the two was a little awkward, although the two had nothing to do with Justin now. But after meeting Taylor Swift, Selena Gomez still hated Taylor Swift. But Taylor Swift was 3 years older than her, after all, and she couldn't watch her sister be cheated by Jong Hai. You don't understand the things between us. Jong Hai is a good person, he won't hurt me. The initiative between us is actually mine, not his. He is like a poppy flower. Irresistible. Looking back at Jong Hai, who was sitting there and studying the beer in front of him, Selena Gomez said with a smile. She knew that Jong Hai was not a good person. Even Jong Hai was definitely not a bad person. She liked to see Jong Hai like this. This Jong Hai was indeed very cute. Oh my God. He must have cast Eastern magic on you. But Selena Gomez looked as if she had eaten a heavy weight. Taylor Swift and Ally Golding could not help but look at each other. They could not let their little sister sink deeper and deeper. At this moment, they happened to see a woman who came with Taylor Swift walk in front of Jong Hai. Seeing this scene, they could not help but smile because they were very familiar with that woman. With her around, it would not be a problem for Selena Gomez to see Zhang Hai's true nature. Since you trust that guy so much, I'll let you see if this guy can withstand the test. Taylor Swift turned Selena Gomez's shoulder and said in Selena Gomez's ear. Her eyes were also fixed on Zhang Hai and that woman. Hello, are you Zhang Hai? My name is Kendall Jenner. I heard that you have a manner? The woman walked in front of Zhang Hai with a smile. Without asking Zhang Hai if he agreed, she sat directly opposite Zhang Hai and said to Zhang Hai with a charming face. I do have a manner. Hearing the words of the woman in front of him, Zhang Hai temporarily stopped his thoughts of studying beer. He glanced at the woman and said somewhat woodenly. This woman looked very tall. Now that she was wearing high heels, she was at least 1.85 meters tall. Even if she was barefoot, she would be close to 1.8 meters. The clothes she was wearing were also very cool, although the temperature outside was almost 0. The most eye-catching thing was her exposed collarbone. It was really beautiful, but the Yuehun tribe below the collarbone was much smaller. Her face carried a mixture of charm and purity, but it was not attractive to Zhang Hai. Because the current Zhang Hai was almost drained dry by Perwalton, he was now in sage mode and would not be invaded by external things. In fact, if Zhang Hai thought about it carefully now, he might remember who this person was. Kendall Jenner was the half-sister of the American socialite, Kim Kardashian. Kim Kardashian was very famous in the United States because of some videotapes that could not be found in China. However, she was famous in China because one of her sisters was married to Lamar Odom, a player who had made great contributions during the Lakers' two-time championship. Therefore, Kim Kardashian's nickname in China was Big Sister-in-Law, and Kendall Jenner's nickname was Little Sister-in-Law or Little Sister Jean. However, this nickname was recently snatched away by her more capable sister. But this did not mean that Kendall Jenner's reputation was low, especially in the supermodel industry. She was 20 years old this year, but she was already a delicate supermodel. She was also one of the supermodels in this year's Victoria's Secret fashion show. What do you raise in your manner? Looking at Zhang Hai, Kendall Jenner was still very interested in Zhang Hai. Although her family was not a top family in the United States and was very rich, they were very well informed. It was impossible for her not to know that Zhang Hai was a young tycoon who was less than 30 years old and could earn more than $1 billion a year. Chapter 641. Oh, I just raised some cows and fish, Wang Yao said. Looking at the woman in front of him with a delicate face and a hint of seduction, Zhang Hai was obviously not very interested in her. Firstly, it was because of Perwalton, and secondly, it was because Selena Gomez was here. Of course, Zhang Hai himself was not particularly interested in these models. Is that so, okay? Listening to Zhang Hai's cold answer, Kendall Jenner, who was opposite him, could not help but feel a little embarrassed. She could see that Zhang Hai did not seem to be interested in her, so she looked at Gigi Hadid, who came with her in the distance, curled her lips, stood up, and left. At this time in the distance, watching Zhang Hai withstand the test, Taylor Swift and the others couldn't help but feel a little dissatisfied. What's wrong with this guy? Kendall is still very good. Could it be that he is not interested in women? Taylor Swift, whose face was very white, but her lips were quite red, couldn't help but frown and say with dissatisfaction. Okay, our matter. Let's leave it at that for today. I still have my man to accompany. Glancing at Taylor Swift, Selena Gomez couldn't help but frown. This guy, I really hate him more and more. After that, she ignored Taylor Swift and Ally Golding and walked straight to Zhang Hai's side. What should we do now? Looking at Selena Gomez's stubborn look, Ally Golding couldn't help but frown and say with a helpless face. She really didn't want to see Selena Gomez get hurt again. We must think of a way. Taylor Swift's eyes narrowed as she looked at Zhang Hai, who stood up over there. You're back. Why does this beer taste so weird? Ignoring Taylor Swift and Ally Golding, Zhang Hai could not help but grin when he saw Selena Gomez. He pointed at the beer in his hand. Oh, you're back. Why does this beer taste so weird? This is a beer produced in the Netherlands. It's called Desperado. It's very strong. It's mixed with tequila, so it tastes a little sweet when you drink it, but people who aren't used to it will feel weird when they drink it. Taylor Swift couldn't help but laugh when she heard Zhang Hai's words. Really? Hearing her words, Zhang Hai glanced at the English words printed on the bottle. He was indeed a little confused. Let's go, I'll take you to meet my friends. They are all beautiful women. Looking at Zhang Hai's appearance, Selena Gomez couldn't help laughing. Zhang Hai can be so cute sometimes. She patted Zhang Hai on the shoulder and took Zhang Hai to the people who were playing in the distance. Seeing Selena Gomez coming, these people also looked at her and Zhang Hai beside her. In the modeling circle, news is actually quite fast. They may not know who Zhang Hai is, but they have heard of this name. It's just that when Zhang Hai came, they didn't want to show too much, but now that Zhang Hai came, they also looked at him with a smile. Tomorrow, there will be a total of 42 models. 15 of them will be angels and 27 supermodels. However, many of them will not be here. For example, your compatriots, she and he. However, there are still quite a number of them. This is Sister Adria Lima. She is from Brazil. Looking at the eyes of these women, Selena Gomez didn't seem to notice at all and began to introduce. The first to be introduced was a Brazilian named Adria Lima. This woman was actually very famous in the modeling circle. In 2013, she had an annual income of $6 million and was the third most expensive model in the world. Why was she the first to be introduced? Because tomorrow's Victoria's Secret was almost her home ground. Born in 1981, she was the model who had signed with Victoria's Secret for the longest time. She also had the most experience here. At 1.78 meters tall, she didn't look like the South Americans that Zhang Hai knew of. Her figure was very tall, her skin was slightly bronze, but it wasn't very heavy. She also had a pair of slender legs that were rarely seen in South Americans. She also had a head of dark brown hair, which made her look really beautiful. After hearing Selena Gomez's introduction, she was the first to stand up and shake hands with Zhang Hai with a smile. But when she shook hands, she secretly used a little strength, which made Zhang Hai feel a little uncomfortable. He was not a casual person. So Zhang Hai quickly pulled his hand back and smiled politely at her. This is Alexander Ambrosio, also a Brazilian. After introducing Lima, Selena Gomez introduced a woman next to Lima. However, this woman was much more reserved. She only shook hands with Lima. After all, this woman was married. Well, Adria Lima was also married, but she got divorced last year. This woman had divorced a rich businessman, so it could be said that Alexander Ambrosio was not short of money and had no interest in Zhang Hai. He only shook her hand gently, smiled, and then let go. He didn't do anything else. This is Bahati Prinsloo, this is Candace Swanepoel, this is Trooper Aldridge, this is Elsa Hosk, this is Martha Hunter. Under Selena Gomez's guidance, Zhang Hai introduced them one by one. These women could be said to be good-looking. Maybe it was because the aesthetic standards of the East and the West were somewhat different. In Zhang Hai's eyes, they weren't stunning at all, but their figures were really good. Moreover, they were also very willing to show off their figures. At this time, although it was ice and snow outside, these women were wearing relatively cool clothes in this box. They did not mind. The men in the room swept their eyes over them. Selena Gomez knew that although Zhang Hai was not a pervert, his immunity to beautiful women was not very high. But tonight, Zhang Hai was a rare gentleman. He did not look at anyone, and the smile on his face was very calm. This made Selena Gomez very satisfied. After introducing a circle of people, Zhang Hai went to continue drinking, and Selena Gomez did not leave Zhang Hai's side again. It was not until 11 o'clock in the evening that everyone dismissed the party in the name of tomorrow's show. Zhang Hai also left with Selena Gomez. Of course, when leaving, Selena Gomez was still wearing Zhang Hai's very old-fashioned jacket. However, even if this jacket was old-fashioned, Selena Gomez did not care because it was given to her by Zhang Hai. After leaving the nightclub, Zhang Hai also took the car. This nightclub had a full-time driver to send Zhang Hai and the others to the place they wanted to go. Originally, Zhang Hai wanted to open a hotel to stay, but he did not expect Selena Gomez to directly ask the driver to drive to her home. After parking the car, Zhang Hai was also pulled into her villa by Selena Gomez. As soon as the door was closed, she directly pressed Zhang Hai against the door. Looking at Selena Gomez's face getting closer and closer, Zhang Hai also knew what she meant at this time. Holding her pretty face, Zhang Hai kissed the red lips in front of him. After a long kiss, Zhang Hai and Selena Gomez slowly separated. Looking at Zhang Hai in front of her, Selena Gomez could not help but smile. Your performance tonight is really good. It's not like the Zhang Hai I know. Seeing so many white upper body and legs, don't you feel anything? Looking at Zhang Hai, Selena Gomez said in Zhang Hai's ear. There is, but aren't you by my side? I know that as long as I can endure it, you will definitely reward me. Hearing Selena Gomez's words, Zhang Hai also smiled, and then whispered to her. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Selena Gomez could not help but smile, then pulled Zhang Hai's clothes and walked into the next room. This night, there was no need to say too much. Although Zhang Hai was still in the semi-sage mode, he was more or less a young man. Without providing spiritual energy to Selena Gomez, it was not a problem for him to deal with her. After being busy until about 2 o'clock in the middle of the night, the two fell asleep in each other's arms. They slept until dawn, and didn't wake up until noon the next day. Then they went to have breakfast and lunch together, and then Selena Gomez went to the venue this time. Zhang Hai casually strolled around New York before going to the venue. Unlike those stars who walked the red carpet, Zhang Hai entered the venue early. Selena Gomez knew that Zhang Hai was not the kind of person who liked to be in the limelight. Although his seat was very close, he was not a star. After sitting here, he saw an unfamiliar star coming in. Sitting next to him was a black man. Zhang Hai did not know what his name was. After seeing Zhang Hai, he smiled and greeted him. Zhang Hai also greeted him, and then there was no sound. They just sat there quietly and waited to watch the show. Tonight, Taylor Swift also came. As a 5-time Grammy Award winner, Taylor Swift was obviously the focus of everyone no matter where she was. After signing her name outside, she also walked into the venue and went to her seat. However, from the corner of her eye, she happened to see Zhang Hai sitting in the distance, so her butt that had not yet sat down lifted up again. Then she walked to Zhang Hai's side and looked at the black man next to Zhang Hai. Hey Jay-Z, where's your wife? Your wife isn't here, so it's not very good for you to be here looking at this thing. Looking at the man beside Zhang Hai, Taylor Swift said with a playful face. Seeing her coming over, the man felt that something was wrong. When he heard her words, he couldn't help but look at her with an embarrassed face, then helplessly looked at her. I said that I asked for leave to watch it. I don't know if you would believe me or not. The black man shrugged and said with some uncertainty. You can think whatever you want, but now I need us to change our seats. My seat is over there. With a chuckle, Taylor Swift said to Jay-Z with a smile on her face. Hearing her words, Jay-Z couldn't help but sigh. It's not good to be targeted by this guy. Although she doesn't know who the man next to her is, she still has to pray for herself. After Jay-Z took Taylor's invitation, she gave her own, then went to her seat and sat down. As for Taylor Swift, she sat next to Zhang Hai, but Zhang Hai didn't react because he didn't know her. He only knew that she was Selena Gomez's friend, but the people sitting on the other side of her and the people behind her couldn't help but be excited. Hey, you still remember me? Sitting down and looking at Zhang Hai sitting next to her, Taylor Swift said softly. Oh, I remember, you are Selena's friend, but you don't seem to get along very well. Hearing her words, Zhang Hai nodded and said. When she heard what Zhang Hai said, Taylor Swift couldn't help but pout. This guy is really touching the pot that doesn't boil. Listen, I know about you and Pro Walton, you scum. I won't let you be with Selena. Seeing Zhang Hai ignoring her so calmly, Taylor Swift couldn't help but say with some annoyance. This guy is too annoying. Oh really? Well then you have to work harder. Originally, Zhang Hai was still wondering why this woman seemed to have a grudge against him. Now that he thought about it, it might be because of Selena Gomez. However, if she wanted to stop Selena Gomez from being with him, then let her try. But then again, the relationship between Zhang Hai and Selena Gomez didn't seem to be what she thought. You. Hearing Zhang Hai's powerful counterattack, Taylor Swift couldn't help but glare, but considering that she was a public figure, she didn't say anything too extreme. Instead, she sat down again, but her eyes stared fiercely at Zhang Hai. Let's watch the show. The show has started. If you stare at me again, I won't lose a piece of meat. Feeling the hostility around him, Zhang Hai touched his nose and smiled, then put his eyes completely on the show in front of him. He didn't come here to be angry. Maybe she heard Zhang Hai's words, but it was most likely not because she knew that this show would be recorded and broadcast on TV, so Taylor Swift forcibly suppressed her anger, then sat there and looked at the empty stage. But at this moment, suddenly, a light flashed, outlining the image of the stage. A blue light flashed on the big screen, then it turned red, then into sparks, and finally with a flash of golden light, the first model appeared. Chapter 642. As the music started and the lights turned on, a pair of golden wings appeared in Jiang Hai's sight. When the model turned around, Jiang Hai couldn't help but exclaim, not because the model had a good figure or a beautiful face, but mainly because of the golden armor. It really blinded Jiang Hai's eyes. After she finished, the second model appeared. She was wearing normal clothes inside, but she had a pair of golden wings on the outside. The third golden wing opened directly, and the ones behind were basically all golden helmets and golden armors. Not long after, the legendary Hua Xia supermodel he also appeared. She had 2 golden bubbles on her shoulders. She was really a nouveau riche. Excuse me, what does this Victoria's Secret sell? Looking at the beautiful women flashing on the stage, and the screams coming from the audience, Jiang Hai looked at Taylor Swift, who was also cheering beside him, with some confusion. Do you still need to ask? They sell vests. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Taylor Swift's eyes did not leave the stage, and she casually replied to Jiang Hai. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai couldn't help but scratch his head. If they sell vests, what the hell is this? Will anyone buy these vests? Each of them is wearing a golden holy garment. To be honest, looking at these golden helmets and golden armors, the first thing that came to Jiang Hai's mind was the legendary golden holy Seiya. When the armor was put on, it was indeed very intimidating. At least, it made Jiang Hai choke with fright. It made Jiang Hai have the illusion that they could tear the sky with a punch and crush the earth with a stomp. What the hell are these? What is a golden holy garment? Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Taylor Swift couldn't help but look at him with some doubts. She was born in the United States and didn't know what a golden holy garment was. Japanese animation was quite popular in the United States, but the most popular was Dragon Ball. Except for the Dragon Balls, the others were really a lot worse. If they had to be ranked, then the second category should be the mecha category. Because the United States was established very late, anime was a good choice to cultivate the self-confidence of the human race. Therefore, in order to cultivate the self-confidence of their own people, the comics that the Americans created were all a bit, bullshit. Judging from the lousy nature of Marvel and DC, if there wasn't a cosmic war, it really wouldn't be able to attract these Americans. Just like One Piece, Naruto, and so on, they just fought back and forth on Earth, but they couldn't destroy the dimension. Not to mention the dimension, even Earth hadn't been destroyed before. Indeed, the scale was much smaller. Dragon Balls were different. Although they couldn't destroy a plane, at least planets and the like could easily explode. Therefore, for the Americans, sometimes if you tell them about Dragon Balls, they might know about it. But if you told them about other cartoons, they would be a little confused. For example, the Golden Saints that Jiang Hai was talking about. You should know about Greek mythology. Hearing Taylor Swift's unique voice, Jiang Hai also told her. I know this. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Taylor Swift nodded. Although Westerners don't know about Saint Seiya, they still know a lot about Greek mythology. After all, in the Western world, many mythological systems came from Greece. For example, in the famous DC and Marvel, there are gods in both worlds, but because DC took the lead, the gods in DC are the gods in Greek mythology. For example, the famous Flash, his power of lightning was given by Hermes. Marvel is a Norse god, so although the Americans believe in God, they are very clear about the Greek gods. It's good to know this, because although it is the age of science and technology, the struggle between the Greek gods has never disappeared. Looking at Taylor Swift, Jiang Hai said with a serious face. Just like Percy Jackson? Taylor Swift couldn't help but ask curiously when she heard Jiang Hai's words. The Percy Jackson she talked about is a movie series. The male protagonist is one of the Greek triumvirate, the half-human child of Poseidon, the god of the sea. Then, with this as the starting point, she began to write a story. She had to admit that the story was not very good, but the box office was not low. Listen to me first. Don't interrupt. These Greek gods have been preparing to take over the earth, but they can't be discovered by modern technology, so they need to find some representatives in the human world to get their power. The warriors found by Zeus are called God's warriors, the warriors found by Poseidon are called sea warriors, the warriors found by Hera are called underworld warriors, but among them, the strongest is the warrior found by Athena, the Saint Seiya. Looking at Taylor Swift, Jiang Hai talked nonsense seriously. But listening to Jiang Hai's words, which were obviously deceiving the ghost, Taylor Swift felt somewhat inexplicable. Regardless of what Taylor Swift thought, Jiang Hai continued to watch the show while talking nonsense seriously. Saint Seiya is divided into 3 levels: gold, silver, and bronze. Gold represents the 12 zodiac constellations. Silver represents the 24 zodiac constellations closest to the zodiac constellations, and bronze represents the other constellations. There are a total of 12 gold saints, 24 silver saints, and 52 bronze saints. Correspondingly, there is also their saint robe, but the saint robe is not made of gold, silver, or bronze, but made of divine iron. Now, these people are wearing shiny gold, similar to the gold saint robe of the gold saints. Don't lie to me. How do you know these things? You must have made it up to deceive me. This is just a series. This year, there are a total of 6 series to be shown: Psychedelic, Ice Angel, Angel Portrait, Fireworks, Pink, and Exotic Butterfly. What does this have to do with the gold saints you are talking about? Looking at Jiang Hai in front of her, Taylor Swift looked at Jiang Hai in disbelief. She wouldn't believe this guy's nonsense. She probably wouldn't believe it. That's why I said it's just like. As for why I know, if you have checked my background, you should know that I was nothing before last year. I suddenly had such a big manor and so much property. In fact, the main reason is, I am a Saint Seiya. In the end, I am still the lowest level. When I become stronger, my fists will tear the sky and my feet will crush the earth. After listening to Taylor Swift's words, Jiang Hai also began to talk nonsense. In fact, he didn't even remember what he said. Although the appearance of these supermodels was, to be honest, not too exquisite, especially for Asians, their figures were really incurable. They were all more than 1.75 meters tall. The places that should be fat were fat, and the places that should be thin were thin. When they walked, some places were constantly trembling. 2 straight long legs, plus a waist without a trace of fat. Cough, Jiang Hai was admiring, not having any evil thoughts. As for what he said to Taylor Swift, he didn't care. Even if she told this story, no one would believe it. Impossible, you must be bluffing. After listening to Jiang Hai's words, Taylor Swift was not stupid. She turned her head and looked at Jiang Hai with contempt. His fists could tear the sky and his feet could crush the earth? Why didn't he say that he was Superman? Look, you still don't believe me? Hearing her words, Jiang Hai also looked at her before the series ended and the next series began. Then, he looked left and right and quietly looked at his chair. The chair they were sitting on was not a very good chair. It was similar to the chairs in the cinema, but the quality was better. Some parts were wrapped in iron, especially the joints. Jiang Hai looked at this piece of iron and happened to find a steel pipe that was not very thick. However, even if it was not very thick, it was still steel after all. It could withstand the force of 500 kilograms. According to the strength of a normal person, 500 kilograms? The impact force of a fist when swinging was almost 500 kilograms. This was said to be professionally trained, a heavyweight boxing champion. However, Jiang Hai's physical fitness was 4 times the limit of a human. Was that a joke? Although Saint Seiya was joking, he was ready to let this girl see his difference, so that she would not think of ways to say bad things about him in front of Selena Gomez every day. Thinking of this, Jiang Hai took the steel pipe and pulled it hard. Only a crisp sound was heard. Taylor Swift saw Jiang Hai pull the steel pipe off. This scared her all of a sudden because she saw that the steel pipe was not thin. Looking at the way Jiang Hai held the steel pipe, she looked at him with some doubts. Is what he said true? There are some things in this world that science can't explain. Holding the steel pipe in front of Taylor Swift, Jiang Hai shrugged and said to her. Then, in front of her, he gently pinched the steel pipe with the thumb and index finger of his right hand. The steel pipe that looked really strong was actually squashed by Jiang Hai. Seeing this scene, Taylor Swift was even more confused in an instant. Originally, in her opinion, Jiang Hai's words were nonsense, but inexplicably, they became more credible. Shoo, I saw that you are Selena Gomez's friend, so I told you. Don't tell anyone else. Looking at her, Jiang Hai wanted to throw the steel pipe away, but after thinking about it, if it was picked up by others, it would be troublesome. He was just scaring Taylor Swift and didn't really want others to know that he was different from normal people. So after thinking about it, Jiang Hai broke the steel pipe from the middle again. Jiang Hai put the part with his own fingerprints inside his clothes. He didn't throw the rest away, but directly stuffed it into Taylor Swift's hands, even though her face was still covered in Meng 13's mask. Looking at her appearance, Jiang Hai couldn't help but smile. Did she really think that Jiang Hai didn't hear her bad-mouthing him last night? Not long after, Selena Gomez walked to the front of the stage wearing the clothes she wore last night. Jiang Hai looked very eye-catching in the big V clothes, and began to sing. At first it was the dance group that came out and later it was the dress supermodels that came out. He had to admit that Selena Gomez, who claimed to be at least 175 meters tall and wore 10-centimeter high heels, was barely enough to catch Selena Gomez's eye. Even though she was much more famous than these supermodels, even though the soles of her shoes were as thick as Selena Gomez's height was only about 1.6 meters tall, and she was almost out of Selena Gomez's sight. The performance of the show was still very fast, especially in the case of watching it. Jiang Hai initially thought that coming to watch the show would be very boring. But unexpectedly, watching beautiful women change clothes was actually quite interesting. While Jiang Hai was still a little reluctant, the show ended. The ordinary audience left first, and the rich and famous people naturally walked through the special passage. Jiang Hai wasn't a famous person, but he was a rich person, so he was also arranged to walk through the special passage. Just outside the special passage, he saw that Selena Gomez had been waiting for him for a long time. As soon as she saw him coming, she immediately rushed over and gave Jiang Hai a big hug. Was my performance good today? Looking at Jiang Hai, Selena Gomez was like a little friend asking for praise. Good, of course it was good. Although Jiang Hai just saw that Selena Gomez was a little petite among a group of big models, he couldn't say such things now. No matter how low his EQ was, he knew that some things couldn't be said, so when he heard Selena Gomez's question, he gave her 2 thumbs up and said seriously. Hearing what Jiang Hai said, Selena Gomez also laughed. Selena, you and him. Forget it, you have to pay attention to your safety. Watching Jiang Hai and Selena Gomez chatting there, Taylor Swift, who came out with Jiang Hai, couldn't help but take a step forward, but just as she said a sentence, she saw Jiang Hai glance at her. Thinking of the half-steel pipe still in her clothes, she temporarily took back her words and could only say pay attention to your safety. Pay attention to your safety? Oh, it seems that we really didn't pay attention to it. Let's go buy a t-shirt later. Hearing Taylor Swift's words, Selena Gomez blinked. She didn't know Taylor Swift's original meaning, and she successfully misunderstood. Between a man and a woman when doing that, it's also called pay attention to your safety. I don't like that thing. Hearing Selena Gomez's words, Jiang Hai shook his head and expressed his preference. Then I'll go buy medicine. Hearing that Jiang Hai didn't like it, Selena Gomez thought for a moment and said to Jiang Hai, eating that thing is not good for your health. Hey, don't think so much about these things. If you really have it, just give birth to it. It's not like I can't afford to raise it. I like children very much. Looking at Selena Gomez, Jiang Hai said with a smile. Who wants to give birth to a child for you? Annoying. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Selena Gomez's bronze skin couldn't help but blush, and then she hit Jiang Hai shyly. However, her hit made Jiang Hai even happier. He hugged her and left with a smile. Taylor Swift looked at the two of them and licked her lips. She wanted to say something, but she didn't know what to say. She really wanted to tell Selena Gomez that the man beside her was definitely not a good person. But considering his threatening action just now, Taylor Swift swallowed the words that were about to come out of her mouth. Her woman's sixth sense and common sense told her that what Jiang Hai just said to her was all nonsense. It was all fake. He was lying to her. But the half-steel pipe in her arms showed that what Jiang Hai said might not be all fake, but who knows how much was fake. Taylor, what are you standing here for? Are you waiting for me? At this moment, Taylor Swift and Selena Gomez's good friend, Ellie Goulding, ran over from behind and patted Taylor Swift with a smile. Phew. Ellie, you scared me to death. By the way, Ellie, do you know Saint Seiya? Looking at Ellie Goulding in front of her, Taylor Swift couldn't help but ask strangely. In her opinion, Ellie might know what the hell this was. At this time, Jiang Hai didn't know that Taylor Swift was scared half to death by him. After he left with Selena Gomez, he went straight back to Selena Gomez's home. There was no need to say much about what he would do when he got home. After eating some simple supper, The two of them did what they needed to do. It was all unspeakable content. The two of them didn't leave home until noon the next day, but this time, they were leaving. Selena Gomez was going back to Los Angeles. Don't forget, she was an actress and also a singer. She also had to work. She wasn't ready to spend the rest of her life with Jong Hai. Since she was leaving, Jong Hai would follow. He didn't know anyone in New York, so he naturally had to go home. Of course, when he got home, he would inevitably be looked down upon. In order to make himself less awkward, Jong Hai decided to bring some gifts back when he went back. But it turned out that if he didn't bring gifts, he might just be looked down upon. After bringing gifts, it was actually, haha, because his gift, speaking of which, was a little, easy for people to misunderstand. Chapter 643. This is the gift you bought for us? I bought it for you guys. I went to the singlet and underwear exhibition this time, so I bought some for you guys to wear. Jong Hai looked at Bernice's teasing gaze in front of him and couldn't help but smile awkwardly, but his eyes were somewhat evasive. Because now he was regretting it. Originally, he wanted to buy these vests and let the girls wear them when they wore their pajamas at home. But now it seemed a little, changed, right? It's very beautiful, but we don't like to wear underwear. It will restrict our development. It's winter now, and we don't go outside. It's more comfortable to wear this at home. After taking a look at the thing in front of her, Daliana said with a smile. While speaking, she squeezed her already developed upper body, then raised her eyebrows at Jong Hai. Then you guys, wear it when you go out. Looking at Daliana's appearance, Jong Hai sighed helplessly. Actually, I quite like these clothes, they look good. Seeing Jong Hai sighing, Azalina chose a suitable one for her and Seth, then directly took off the t-shirt she was wearing in front of Jong Hai. In an instant, two things that shouldn't be there appeared in Jong Hai's sight. And between her legs, Azalina didn't have the habit of wearing underwear, so it was clearly visible at this time. Although it could be seen every day, it was the first time Jong Hai saw it like this. Maybe it was the second time? Wow, Lena, you're really getting bigger and bigger. Seeing this scene, Jong Hai almost choked, but Daliana and Marian's eyes lit up. The two girls went directly in front of Azalina, and used their hands to touch the two things in front of them. Okay, stop fooling around. You guys will grow up in the future. Let me try these clothes. After slapping away Daliana and Marian's little hands, Azalina rolled her eyes at them, then picked up the clothes and tried them on. I say, if you want to try these clothes, can you go back to the house and try them on? Looking at the bold and unrestrained Azalina, Jong Hai whispered. Bernice and Little Ye were also blushing at this time, but their eyes didn't leave Azalina. They had never worn underwear like this before, so now they were quite curious. Therefore these women in the house completely ignored Jong Hai's words, and just watched Azalina try on. Azalina changed into a black underwear, and the vest on her upper body was almost see-through, and it also had a squeezing effect. Jong Hai looked at the vest on her upper body, and it seemed to be about to burst. Under the black vest some things could be seen very clearly. He had to admit that the designer of this vest was definitely not a good person. After wearing this vest, not only did it not block the things that shouldn't be blocked as Jong Hai thought, but it also gave off a sense of beauty. On the contrary, it reflected a kind of hazy beauty. Looking at it, Jong Hai had an impulse to tear the vest apart. As for the lower body, well, Jong Hai really didn't look at it. When he bought it, he stood at the door of the shop and asked the shop assistant to help him choose. He really didn't know what the shop assistant chose. He only vaguely remembered the sizes of these girls. For example, Daliana and Marian should be B, Bernice should be C, and Little Ye should only be A+. After all, she was congenitally deficient in the past. As for Azalina, she should be D. This was also what made Jong Hai most curious. When he first saw Azalina, she was only B, but after living here for so long, she had grown by 2 sizes. He had to admit that she was really scary. After the shop assistant finished choosing, Jong Hai didn't look at it carefully, and directly paid the money and left. Now, he regretted it. Because at this time, Azalina chose. Not to mention the upper body, the problem was that there were no pants on the lower body. Instead, it was a high-waisted corset with a few bags hanging below, plus 2 thigh-high stockings. In other words, the key part was that it was endless, and everything could be seen. After putting it on, Azalina deliberately sat on the sofa and raised her legs, perfectly showing her things that shouldn't be shown in front of Jiang Hai. Hey! This is the lower part of the clothes. It's quite convenient. Hearing Azalina's words, Jiang Hai had no choice but to retreat. He rolled and crawled to his room on the second floor. He needed to calm down. This was really too much. After going to New York twice in a row, Jiang Hai was temporarily free because he really had nothing to do now. In mid-November, it was completely the rhythm of winter. Although it hadn't snowed yet this year, Winthrop was dry and cold. The girls had completely left the house. Only Jiang Hai would walk around every morning, going to the cowshed, the dock, and the stable to take a look. Then he would come back to lie on the balcony on the second floor, play with his mobile phone, read novels, or play games or watch TV. Aphrodite and the others were also completely free because the winery was already in a semi-closed state. Dulles Gerard and O'Connor Murphy only needed to watch over there, mainly to guard against mice and the like. The girls had nothing to do at all. After they had nothing to do, except for going back to their villa to sleep at night, they spent the rest of their time at Jiang Hai's place, watching the 5 girls put on their clothes. They, who had already done something that shouldn't have happened with Jiang Hai, were even more free. Sometimes, Aphrodite and the others would even directly go topless, which made Jiang Hai quite depressed, but he still couldn't do anything. Because Bernice was watching from the side, as long as Aphrodite and the others came over, Bernice would follow Jiang Hai from time to time. Jiang Hai didn't know why she was like this, but she clearly didn't want anything to happen between him and these girls. In addition, Jiang Hai was thin-skinned, so it was really not easy to do anything. In this way, the days really went on so painfully and happily. In the blink of an eye, half a month had passed. People were afraid of being shaken. Everything was the same. Time would pass very quickly. Just like now, it was already December. As time went into December, the cold air of the Arctic began to move south. The sky that was originally quite clear in November was no longer clear after entering December. Dark clouds pressed down on the city. Of course, this was just an adjective. But in Boston, the city was really easy to rush because the snow here was too heavy. In fact, since entering November, Boston had snowed a few times, but it wasn't very heavy. After it snowed, the next day, the snow was only 2 or 3 centimeters thick. Well, in fact, this snow was not considered heavy in the Northeast or Winthrop. After entering December, the real heavy snow came, and this first heavy snow was very fierce, falling for 2 days and 1 night. Unlike other places in North America, Winthrop was located on the bay side. It rained a lot in summer and snowed a lot in winter. Most importantly, the wind was not small. Although the forest played a big role, it was still wind after all, and it couldn't be completely blocked. The snowflakes kept falling down, and the north wind kept howling. Jiang Hai couldn't help but think of a song, "The winter wind carries the snowflakes, blowing my tears down." Jiang Hai was now considered to be in a foreign country, but in his view, he shouldn't be considered to be wandering. It rained for 2 days and 1 night. After staying outside for a night, Jiang Hai's work also started because he had to start shoveling the snow. Every year when it came to shoveling snow, Jiang Hai would have a headache because his manor was a little too big. There was no trouble at the dock because the seawater would not freeze. There was a layer of warm current under the sea, constantly surging up, so the seawater would not freeze and the snow would fall into the sea. But there was some trouble in the manor. The snow had to be shoveled down from the roof of the cowshed and the stable. Otherwise, it would be easy to snow again, and the cowshed would collapse. At that time, Jiang Hai wouldn't even be able to find a place to cry. In addition, the roads in the manor had to be cleared. The snow could be pushed onto the grassland. The land was not afraid of freezing, and the snow contained a certain amount of nutrients. When spring came next year, the snow would nourish the land and make it more fertile. Just like in China, why was the land in the 3 northeastern provinces the most fertile? First, it was because the land here could only be planted for half a year. Half a year was spent resting under the snow, so the fertility of the land was reduced. Second, it was because of the snow. On the morning of the second day after the snow stopped, Jiang Hai dressed up and walked out of the house early in the morning. After staying at home for 3 days, Jiang Hai shivered when he suddenly came out. He put on his gloves and saw Edward Anderson and Robbins Garcia, who had already started working from a distance. Because the cowshed still needed someone to take care of it, the main work was now done by the fishermen on the dock. Only 2 cowboys came out, Robbins Garcia and Harriman Fells, and Zhang Hai's nominal bodyguard, Knursen Peters. Seeing Zhang Hai coming from a distance, these people also straightened up and smiled at Zhang Hai. "Phew, it's really cold," Zhang Hai said as he walked over and picked up a shovel casually. Today's weather forecast said that the highest temperature during the day was -12 degrees, which was really a little too cold. This couldn't be helped. After it snowed, the snow would absorb the sunlight and melt, so it would be particularly cold. "Haha, boss. This proves that you haven't left the house for the past few days. We've all gotten used to it." After listening to Zhang Hai's words, Robbins Garcia couldn't help but laugh. They didn't care whether it was snowing outside or not. The cows and horses had to eat, so no matter if it was raining or not, even if it was raining knives, Robbins Garcia and the others had to go to the cowshed. Now that he heard Zhang Hai's words, he couldn't help but laugh. However, this was also an innate problem. Zhang Hai was the boss, and he didn't earn this hard-earned money. "Come on, let's get to work," Zhang Hai said with a smile. He picked up the shovel and shoveled the thick snow in front of him. The snow on the ground was very thick. Even Zhang Hai, who came from Bingqing, hadn't seen such thick snow in a while. The snow was very clean and sticky. With a shovel, a large piece could be scooped up. Of course, it was useless no matter how big the piece was because the snow was already knee-deep. After opening the door, Zhang Hai and Xiao Bai rushed out. Unfortunately, Zhang Hai couldn't find their location now. Needless to say, Zhang Hai knew that today was destined to be a very difficult battle. Fortunately, he only cleaned up his manner. Although it was very tiring, Zhang Hai was happy when he thought about the land outside and the town. This snow was enough to keep the residents of Winthrop and Mayor Wallace busy. According to the news, this kind of heavy snow should be considered a snow disaster. However, for the people of Boston, they were already used to such snow disasters. Because Boston would have such heavy snow every year, they already had a way to deal with it and had a tradition. No matter what the people outside were like, Zhang Hai and the others still had to work hard. However, this snow was indeed too heavy. Last year, it also snowed here, and it was similar to this. But last year, Zhang Hai only needed to sweep 3 places: the front door in the parking lot, the road leading to the main entrance, the road leading to the pier, and the road leading to the cowshed. Just like that, he was busy for a day. This year, he had to sweep an additional road, and that was the river. Zhang Hai's man-made river. Although it was next to the sea, there was a thin layer of ice on the river surface. Of course, Zhang Hai didn't need to sweep the snow on the river surface. The main thing he needed to sweep was the snow on the riverside road. This riverside road was very far away, almost as far as half of the manor. In addition, there was the road to the airport and the airport to sweep. He had to admit that it was indeed a little troublesome when his business was big. After spending an hour sweeping the parking lot, he spent another 2 hours sweeping the road to the entrance. Logically speaking, he should take a break now and sweep the road to the pier in the afternoon. However, looking at the vast expanse of white snow, Zhang Hai couldn't help but feel a little impatient. Chapter 644. There are too many places we have to clean. It's so troublesome. During lunch, because they had worked all morning and exhausted a lot of their physical strength, Zhang Hai provided everyone with high-calorie food at noon. Moreover, the portion was enough, so everyone ate happily. But Zhang Hai was thinking, if the manor's roads were to continue to be swept like this, when would it come to an end? It often snowed in Winthrop, and they really liked it. Moreover, there was no telling when it would snow so heavily. According to Robbins Garcia's words, it would take them about 3 days to clean the manor this time. 3 days to clean the manor. There was no telling when another 3 days would come. Well, they didn't have to do anything else this winter except sweep the snow. There's no other way. We've all been like this. Don't worry, boss, with such heavy snow, it won't last until next winter. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Edward Anderson couldn't help but laugh. They were indeed used to it. No, we can't sweep the snow here for the whole winter. We have to think of a way. Zhang Hai touched his chin. It was better not to leave the initiative to God. He wasn't someone who liked to rely on God for his livelihood. Is there any way to get rid of the snow quickly? Looking at the few people in front of him, Zhang Hai thought for a while and couldn't help but ask them. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Edward Anderson and Robbins Garcia couldn't help but look at each other. There is a way to get rid of the snow, but it will cost money. It's much faster to get a snowplow, but this thing won't be used in summer, so I don't recommend it. After thinking for a while, Robbins Garcia spoke first. Although Robbins Garcia had been with Zhang Hai for a long time, he was still quite used to the style of small manners and pastures. For example, sweeping the snow or something like that would be done when they were a little tired. There was no need to spend money on machinery or something like that. Snowplow? That's a good thing. However, after hearing his words, Zhang Hai's eyes lit up. That was a good idea. Can we just drive this thing here? Looking at the snow outside the window, Zhang Hai said excitedly. Why didn't he think of a snowplow? The snowplow can't do anything about the snow outside. It can only sweep the thin snow. Now we have to do it ourselves. But if we buy one, we can drive the snowplow out for a spin every 1 or 2 hours the next time it snows so heavily. That way, we don't have to sweep anymore. However, as soon as his voice fell, Edouard Anderson couldn't help but shrug his shoulders. Zhang Hai was too naive. No car could pass through such thick snow, but it could be used in the future. Yes, that's a good idea. After thinking for a while, Zhang Hai nodded. He didn't care about the money for the snowplow, but if he could stop sweeping the snow in the future, this small amount of money was worth it. Boss, if you don't want to sweep the snow, why don't you add a cover to the place where the snow needs to be swept? Just as Zhang Hai decided to get a snowplow in the next few days, Enchanting Peters, who had just swallowed a piece of steak, couldn't help but ask curiously. His brain is relatively slow, but he is not stupid. As soon as he said this, everyone quieted down. Did I say something wrong? Seeing everyone quiet down, Enchanting Peters couldn't help but ask with some doubts. No, you're right. Why didn't I think of it? Looking at the parking lot outside and the road over there, Zhang Hai didn't think of adding a cover there. Yes, it's just adding a cover, it doesn't need to be very good. As long as there are some columns made of reinforced concrete, then the cover will be reinforced, and the top will be smooth and sloped. Not only the parking lot, but also the road, so that even in the summer, when it rains, people won't get wet when they walk on the road. Although this was another sum of money, Zhang Hai was lacking in everything but money. Once this shed was built, it would indeed be able to solve the problem once and for all. Of course, this was just an idea. Even if Zhang Hai wanted to build it now, no construction team would be able to start work at this time. It has to be admitted that 3 stooges are better than 1 zhuge liang. After everyone had a meal, they thought of a way to solve the snow. A snowplow and a shed, these two have been put on the agenda by Zhang Hai. But now there is no way to buy a snowplow because at this time, not only is the snow in Zhang Hai's manor blocked, but the highway outside is also blocked. At least when the snow is cleared and the highway outside can be used, Zhang Hai will go to Boston to buy a snowplow. After lunch, Zhang Hai and the others were busy again because they know that they don't have to sweep like this next time, so Zhang Hai and the others are still very energetic. In the afternoon, not only did they clear the road to the cowshed and the dock, but they also cleared the road to the airport. After returning, even if Zhang Hai's physical fitness is 4 times that of ordinary people, he still can't bear it. After dinner, he went directly to the room to sleep. The next morning, they went to the airport to clear the snow. The airport is very important here. Because they have to rely on the plane at the airport to patrol every day. No one knows if someone will come to steal the fish. The fish in Zhang Hai's fish farm are very important, they are his private property. In the afternoon, Zhang Hai and the others continued to sweep the road by the river. After sweeping for the whole afternoon, they only swept 2/3 of the road. After another day of rest, on the 3rd day, Zhang Hai and the others used the whole morning to sweep the remaining 1/3 of the road. At this time, the highway outside their door is also cleared. Zhang Hai didn't waste time and directly took Robbins Garcia to Boston in the afternoon. He is the only one among them who knows more about snowplows. After arriving, it is not too troublesome. After all, it is just a snowplow and is not very expensive, they easily picked one. In fact, the snowplow is not specially designed. They are a variant of the pickup truck. The front can be equipped with a snowplow and a plowshare. The plowshare is used to push the snow away, and the snowplow is used to clear the snow. The functions are different, and the effect is different. However, this plowshare can only push about 20 centimeters of snow at most. For example, there is almost half a meter of snow in Zhang Hai's manor, so it can't do anything. After all, once it is pushed, the snow will almost enter the engine. This is impossible. In addition, the sides of the car are also equipped with flaps that can be opened to increase the snow removal area. When working, the front of the car is connected to the middle line of the road. This wheel is very important. It can be said to be the most important thing because it is used to sweep the snow out of the ground and throw it into the lawn. Anyway, Jiang Hai will install a roof next year no matter what. So it doesn't matter whether this thing is good or bad. Anyway, it will only be used for one winter. After all, it is new. One winter is not a problem. After buying the snowplow, Jiang Hai is ready to go back. But just as he drove the car to the entrance of the manor, he saw Mayor Wallace's car slowly driving over. Although the snow on the highway is almost cleared, there is still some snow. But after all, there was still some drifting snow. At this time, it was reasonable to drive slower, especially for an old man like Mayor Wallace. "Hey Jiang, you bought a big guy?" Seeing Mayor Wallace in the distance, Jiang Hai stopped the car first, ready to see if he is coming to him or going to Boston. Sure enough, the other party is coming to him. As soon as he saw Jiang Hai, he was already slowing down. Slowly stopping next to Jiang Hai's car, Mayor Wallace said with shining eyes, "Yeah, the snow in the manor is too thick. It is troublesome to sweep it." Looking at Mayor Wallace, Jiang Hai said with a smile, "Can you lend it to the town?" Hearing that it was really Jiang Hai who bought it, Mayor Wallace said with a smile, "No, the town made so much money this year. This car is only about $20,000. Don't tell me the town can't afford it." As soon as he heard Mayor Wallace's words, Jiang Hai curled his lips and calmly refused him. What a joke. This thing is his. Tisk, rich people are really stingy. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Mayor Wallace couldn't help but shrug his shoulders and say, "My money didn't grow on trees. If the town borrows it and I use it badly, who am I going to find?" Rolling his eyes at Mayor Wallace, Jiang Hai said impatiently. Jiang Hai is very clear about the character of the people in the town. If he borrows it, then someone will go to the town to borrow it, and the town is very likely to borrow it. Jiang Hai is not stingy. In fact, he is stingy. Why should the snowplow he bought be used by the town? Besides, if the town is really in trouble, he can donate one. But the problem is that the town is definitely not in trouble this year. Okay, my dear Grandette from the mysterious East. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Mayor Wallace knew that Jiang Hai will not lend the car to him no matter what. This Jiang Hai is a very stubborn person. If there's something, if there's nothing, I'm going back. Hearing that the old man kept going astray, Jiang Hai couldn't help but look at him and open the door. If there's something, let's talk inside. After hearing Jiang Hai's words, Mayor Wallace laughed, stepped on the accelerator, and ran into the door opened by Jiang Hai. Jiang Hai also drove the snowplow back to the manor. Of course, when he went back, he also sent a message to Bernice and the others. There are guests coming. If they are still wearing the same clothes, it will be troublesome. Fortunately, Bernice and the others are still very vigilant. When they saw Mayor Wallace's car, they had already changed their clothes. When Jiang Hai parked the car and walked into the villa with Mayor Wallace, Bernice and the others were all ready. "Mayor, you are here." Seeing Mayor Wallace come in, Bernice and the others couldn't help but smile at him. "Hey, I came to talk to Jiang Hai about something." Looking at the scene in front of him, Mayor Wallace also said with a smile, and then sat on the sofa that had been empty for him. Jiang Hai went to the refrigerator and took 2 bottles of Coke, one for himself and one for the mayor. After taking a sip, Jiang Hai looked at Mayor Wallace, wanting to see what he came here for. Looking at Jiang Hai in front of him, Mayor Wallace asked Jiang Hai with a smile, "I won't beat around the bush. Isn't it already December? Jiang, you should also know how important December is for us." "Christmas?" Taking a sip of Coke, Jiang Hai looked at Mayor Wallace and asked. "Yes, it's Christmas. In the past, when we celebrated Christmas, each family celebrated it by themselves. But this year, the town has some money, so I'm going to hold a Christmas dinner on the last day of Christmas, during the carnival." Looking at Jiang Hai, Mayor Wallace said with a serious face. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai nodded. It didn't matter to do some such activities. Such a dinner can deepen the townspeople's sense of honor and unity, which is also beneficial for Jiang Hai. "What do you need me to do? Provide ingredients or pay some money?" Looking at Mayor Wallace in front of him, Jiang Hai is still willing to pay. He is not really stingy. Some money should be spent. He will still spend, especially when it is to earn face for himself. There's no need for money. The town has made a lot of money in the past few months. It's not a problem to pay for this banquet. As for the ingredients, we can't afford the ingredients here. Haha, I came here this time for 2 reasons. First, to get your approval. Second, to get you to make a show. Looking at Jiang Hai, Mayor Wallace said with a smile, but as soon as his words fell, Jiang Hai was stunned. Make a show? Is this a joke? Westerners also watch crosstalks, skits, and so on during the holidays? That's too ridiculous. Looking at Jiang Hai's puzzled eyes, Mayor Wallace also explained to Jiang Hai. Because the organizer is the town, there is no need for the townspeople to pay. The venue, decorations, and so on are all done by us. However, the townspeople also have to show something. This is not money, but a show, singing, dancing, talk show, anything is fine. Jiang Hai, by the way, you have always wanted to integrate into the town. You have to let the townspeople see you, a living you, like ordinary people, telling jokes and embarrassing yourself. If you stay in your manner all the time, you will never really integrate into this town. Looking at Jiang Hai's puzzled eyes, Mayor Wallace also explained to Jiang Hai. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai refused at first. He was not going to perform on stage. It would be too embarrassing. But after hearing Mayor Wallace's words, Jiang Hai couldn't help but frown. He wondered if it was worth it. Chapter 645. That's a deal. I think it's a good idea. Before Jiang Hai could answer, Bernice had already spoken. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai couldn't help but look at her in surprise. Does she understand what I'm talking about? Anyway, Delina and the others have nothing to do at home. Instead of that, they might as well go and rehearse a program. Looking at Jiang Hai's gaze, Bernice walked behind Jiang Hai with a smile, put her hands on Jiang Hai's shoulders, and said with a smile. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai couldn't help but look at Delina and Marian. When he saw that their eyes were 50% puzzled, 30% nervous, and 20% expectant, Jiang Hai also understood that Delina and Marian really wanted to give it a try. That's fine. Anyway, you have nothing to do at home in winter. It's not bad to find something to do. Looking at Delina and Marian in front of him, Jiang Hai said with a smile. Hearing Jiang Hai's decision, the 2 girls glanced at each other and didn't rush to refuse. They really wanted to find something to do. Otherwise, they would have nothing to do except hooking, idling at home all day long. That's a deal. Delina and Marian will perform a program. But what program will you perform? Hearing that Jiang Hai was so happy to perform a program, Mayor Wallace couldn't help but be overjoyed. He then picked up his mobile phone and specially wrote a memo. We don't know yet. After looking at each other, although they wanted to go on the stage to show themselves, the 2 girls hadn't thought about what they would perform yet. So after hesitating for a while, they muttered in a low voice. Oh, it doesn't matter. Take your time to think about it. Don't worry about it. Just tell me a week in advance. You still have half a month. Looking at the 2 girls in front of him, Mayor Wallace couldn't help but say with a smile. What about the others? I'm sure you must have your own thoughts. After seeing Delina and Marian, Mayor Wallace couldn't help but ask with a smile. Don't look at me. I'm here to protect Jiang Hai. As soon as she saw his gaze, Azalina waved her hand and said, I don't know anything. Xiao Ya, who was standing beside her, hesitated for a moment before speaking to Mayor Wallace. It's okay, Little Ya will sing with me. Hearing what Little Ya said, Bernice patted her chest and said, You sing? Hearing her words, Jiang Hai's eyebrows raised. He really didn't know that Bernice could sing? You will be scared to death. I won a singing competition before. Bernice rolled her eyes at Jiang Hai and said proudly. Are you sure? Jiang Hai really hasn't heard Bernice sing, but to be honest, Bernice's voice is not very, pleasant to the ear. Her voice is a little low, not so bright and sharp. Although it is also very pleasant to the ear, according to Jiang Hai's theory, people who speak like this generally don't sing very well. It should be. But she actually said that she won a singing competition before? Yes, I can prove this, it's our community's. Hearing Jiang Hai questioning her sister's words, Xiaoya immediately raised her hand and said with a serious face. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai couldn't help but look at Bernice with some amusement. It's really, the talented are bold. TCH, it's better than you not daring to do anything. I'm already singing, what are you doing? Seeing Jiang Hai's gaze, Bernice couldn't help but turn her head and glare at Xiaoya. Xiaoya couldn't help but spit out. She knew that she said something wrong. Then Bernice turned her head and looked at Jiang Hai with a strong voice. Me, I really don't know how to sing. I only know one song. Scratching his head, Jiang Hai has never been a cultural backbone. Since he was young, he would hide if he could. Before he was in high school, the only thing he liked was to play games. After he graduated from high school, the only two things he liked were to play games and play basketball. Singing and so on, his level is very average. Which song? Hearing that Jiang Hai can sing, Bernice couldn't help but be interested. Seeing her so excited, Jiang Hai thought for a moment and said the only lyrics he remembered of the song, "Gay friends in the wind and rain." Gay friends in the wind and rain? What the hell? Scratching her head, Bernice looked at Jiang Hai. Could it be that he made it up? Just licking the remains of my gay friend, welcoming the halo of sleep, asterisk 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 my gay friend in the wind and rain. Looking at her suspicious eyes, Jiang Hai directly sang, but before he could finish, Bernice directly kicked him. This song is called asterisk 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 my gay friend in the wind and rain? Now that you've kicked me, I really remember that I know a lot of songs. Something like Freeze Shit Hard, and It's So Cold when I was in the Northeast, I played in the mud, the steel pot cried out for repair, the broken pot replaced with a new one. There's also an English song, The Left Hand That Protects the Breast. Protect, protect, protect. Looking at Bernice's appearance, Jiang Hai suddenly thought of something. It seems that he really did learn a lot of songs. Get lost. Pinching Jiang Hai, Bernice couldn't help but roll her eyes at him. This guy really learns everything, but he doesn't learn well. What kind of songs are those? It's a mess. Left hand that protects the breast, what is your right hand doing? Hey, I think you sing well. The first song, Freezing the Shit, should be a Russian song. The second song, Playing in the Mud in the Northeast, seems to be English, but the pronunciation is a bit like Indian Three Kingdoms. I don't know the third song, but I know the fourth song, Bahamian. But Jiang, you have been here for more than a year, but your pronunciation is still not accurate. It's Who Let the Dogs Out, or not protect, but woof. Looking at Jiang Hai and Bernice playing there, Mayor Wallace was afraid of hurting his eyes, so he thought for a while and said it. An expert, you can even recognize this? What about this song? You peel a coconut skin, but you give a pear. Hearing that Mayor Wallace recognized what it is, Jiang Hai was also surprised. Then he continued to sing. Magic red suyer? Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Mayor Wallace couldn't help but be a little confused. He didn't understand what it meant. But listening to Jiang Hai's tone, it should be this song. And hearing what Jiang Hai said, Daliana and Marian couldn't help but cover their faces now. Speaking of which, they let Jiang Hai listen to the Magic Red song, but in the end, their idol was ruined like this. Amazing, but Mayor Wallace, your words are wrong. You should say, your song is so sweet that my teeth are falling out. Then I said, it's your teeth that are not good, uncle. Then you said, you are very creative. Learn music from me. Looking at Mayor Wallace, Jiang Hai couldn't stop and kept talking. After listening to Jiang Hai's words, this time Mayor Wallace was completely confused. He looked at Daliana and Marian as if asking for help, because he really didn't know what Jiang Hai was talking about. What kind of joke is this? Something is wrong. Okay, Mayor Wallace, we will definitely support this matter. As for Jiang Hai, he will also make a program, but it will definitely not be singing. Patting her forehead, Bernice said with some helplessness. Jiang Hai is always up to no good. Oh well, I mainly came here this time to talk about this matter. Since Jiang Hai also agrees, then I will leave. Seeing that Bernice has already helped Jiang Hai to make a decision, Mayor Wallace left with a smile. This time his task has been completed. Not only did he get Jiang Hai to agree to the banquet, but he also confirmed that Jiang Hai will participate, and he also brought back 3 programs. This is a great joy. Since his goal has been achieved, the American didn't have the mood to chat in someone else's home, so he waved his hand and turned away. As soon as he left, Jiang Hai helplessly looked at Bernice, who was beside him. "I have no other talents besides singing these songs." Shrugging, Jiang Hai said with some speechlessness. He really doesn't know much, but Bernice ignored him. She turned around and went to study what to sing with little Ya. She completely ignored Jiang Hai. "Hey, you helped me decide, but you didn't help me decide on the program. You are not particular." Looking at Bernice walking away in front of him, Jiang Hai couldn't help but say helplessly, but he also knew that Bernice was reliable. Even a sow could climb a tree. "In the end, I have to think about my own program." Leaning on the sofa, Jiang Hai casually turned on the TV and thought about his talents. "I don't know if sleeping and eating are talents. If they are, then I actually have quite a lot of talents." In this way the night was silent. Little Ya and Bernice were studying what songs they were going to sing, while Delina and Marian were studying what performances they were going to perform. After Lu Qing came out, Aphrodite and the others all went back to their own villas because they had to go back and check. While cleaning, they also had to turn on the floor heating to warm up the room. Otherwise, it would be troublesome if the room was frozen. Besides, they had been living in Jiang Hai's villa recently and didn't have any opportunities. Bernice kept a close eye on them, so there wouldn't be any effect even if they came back. And the most important thing was that now they basically didn't go to the hot spring anymore. Although the hot spring water was still very hot, the exposed areas were too cold. It was good if they hadn't enjoyed the hot spring before, but if they had, then there was no point in it. The tap in the bathroom in their villa was also connected to the hot spring water, so there was no need to go there. Therefore, Jiang Hai decided to sleep alone while thinking about what he should do. In Jiang Hai's view, such a plot was specially designed for the protagonist in the novels he had read before. At this time, the protagonist went up to play a guzheng or a flute, and then the audience would be dumbfounded. Then there would be thunderous cheers, and then there would be love-struck fools who would discover that the protagonist had talents in this area, and then they would marry him or something. The story should unfold like this, but Jiang Hai suddenly realized that he didn't know how to play the flute, nor did he know how to play the guzheng. Even when playing the piano, he only knew how to play the song Dolls and Bears Dance. Obviously, it was impossible to rely on this trick to awe the courage. So he studied for half a night and unexpectedly found that he didn't seem to have any talents. But he was not the only one who thought for half a night. The next morning, except for the heartless Azalina, who had nothing to do, who woke up normally, the others only woke up yawning when it was almost 10 o'clock. After Jiang Hai had breakfast, he nestled on the sofa again. Today, Robbins Garcia had fed little Xia, so Jiang Hai didn't have to feed it. It was better for him to stay at home, but he was lazy. However, Delina, Marian, little Ya, and Bernice had already put on their clothes and were about to go out. Seeing these girls, who usually didn't leave the manor once a month, oh no, even a season, and who only went shopping online, actually going out, Jiang Hai couldn't help but be confused. What the hell was this? Where are you going? The road outside hasn't been cleared yet. Seeing that they were about to leave, Jiang Hai couldn't help but ask curiously. We're going to find Sandy. We've studied for a long time, but we haven't chosen a good program. She used to be a teacher, so maybe she has some ideas. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Bernice said to Jiang Hai. Hearing what she said, Jiang Hai's mind also turned. Hey, why didn't I think of that? Wait for me, I'll go too. After that, Jiang Hai jumped up from the sofa. As the saying goes, the onlooker sees the game best. I can't think of any specialties. Maybe it will be effective to ask others? You're going too? Okay, hurry up. Hearing that Jiang Hai was going too, Bernice was stunned for a moment, but she nodded and agreed. This was because she knew about the relationship between Jiang Hai and Xanthi. In fact, she knew Jiang Hai thanks to Xanthi. If she really had something with Jiang Hai, would it be considered stealing her best friend's boyfriend? Well, this is a problem. But there are a lot of things to think about now. After Jiang Hai went upstairs, he changed into his own clothes and went downstairs to get the car. After getting in the car, the women also rubbed their hands. Jiang Hai's battle shield has not been driven for a while. It would be strange if it wasn't cold when it just got on. After all, Jiang Hai just got it out of the ice and snow. After warming the car for a while, Jiang Hai drove away from the manor. On the way to Winthrop, Bernice, who was sitting next to Zhang Hai, kept looking at Zhang Hai who was driving. Should I buy a car too? Otherwise, it's a little inconvenient here. Looking at Zhang Hai's movements, Bernice whispered. Hearing her words, Zhang Hai also noticed this. Logically speaking, in the United States, a car is a very common means of transportation, but in his manner, except for himself, it seems that his women don't have a car. It's a bit too general, but they really don't have a car. Aphrodite and the others don't have a car, nor do Daliana and Marion. In the United States, the driver's license is a compulsory subject for high school graduation. It takes credits, so in the United States, as long as you graduate from high school, you will have a driver's license, but they didn't go to high school. Bernice used to have a car, but because she lived with Zhang Hai for a long time, her car was not sent over, so she doesn't have a car. Chapter 646. When spring comes, I will buy you a few cars to drive. Delina and Marion are only 15 years old this year, and they will only be 16 next year after the Chinese New Year. It will take another year for them to drive, but they can practice in the manner, so I will buy them for you first. After thinking about it, Zhang Hai's parking lot was empty anyway, so he didn't care. It was indeed inconvenient to buy a few cars for Bernice and Marion. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Bernice's eyes couldn't help but light up, and then she began to think about what kind of car she should buy. But that will have to wait until next spring. There is still a season left. While thinking, Zhang Hai's car also drove into the town. Before coming, Bernice called Shenty Clive in advance. After learning that she was in the town hall, Zhang Hai parked the car directly in the parking lot of the town hall. Then Zhang Hai and others walked into this very old building. This was not the first time Zhang Hai came here, but at this time, it was much quieter than the last time he came here. With the arrival of winter, the number of tourists decreased, and the workload in the town also decreased rapidly. With more tourists, there were more things to do in the town. They had to solve the local disputes and the tourists' disputes. They also had to solve the pressure in Boston and Massachusetts, and there were many other things. But with the arrival of winter, the end of the year was approaching. Whether it was the state government or the municipal government, there were fewer things to do. With fewer tourists, the workload in the town was also reduced. Now they basically worked 5 days a week, 3 half-days of work, 2 full days, and 3 half-days of rest. When Zhang Hai and others arrived, it was just past 10 o'clock in the morning, and it seemed that the town was really not busy. Everyone gathered in groups of 3 or 5, discussing the banquet, drinking coffee, and eating desserts. It was really comfortable. In the United States, government agencies were actually much more relaxed than private enterprises because there was no such thing as a secure rice bowl in the United States. All of their government employees were hired and not signed lifetime contracts. None of them were signed for 5 years. Basically, they were signed for 2 years or 1 year. Their salary was not very high. Compared to the private companies, it was indeed a lot worse. Those who earned less naturally had more freedom. It was precisely because of this that civil servants in the United States were very lax. In addition, Mayor Wallace himself was not a romantic person, so no one would care about them here. Here, as long as you finish your work, you can play games or watch the competition, as long as you don't disturb the people who are working. But like now, when no one was working, it was good to get together and chat. When Zhang Hai's group came in, the town staff were stunned for a moment before looking at Zhang Hai with enthusiasm. Hey, Zhang Hai is here. Zhang, how come you have time to come here today? Zhang, I heard that you are going to attend the banquet and perform? Zhang Hai heard their greetings instantly. Hearing everyone's voice, Zhang Hai smiled and answered them one by one. Looking at Zhang Hai, Delina and the others were also very proud. After all, they were close to Zhang Hai. Sandy. After greeting these enthusiastic people, Zhang Hai walked into the office area and saw Sh20 Clive who had just come out of the office. Sh20 Clive also heard outside that Zhang Hai had come, so he came out specially. You are early enough. Let's go together. Looking at Zhang Hai and the others, Sh20 Clive had a strange look in her eyes, but she quickly covered it up. She smiled and took the initiative to walk in front of Zhang Hai. Sh20 Clive was originally a primary school teacher, but in the primary school, her reputation was very high. Except for the principal and the teaching director, her reputation was indeed the strongest. All the parents were willing to put their children in her class. Later on, when the town started to develop tourism, Mayor Wallace only seconded her to help. Later on, he found that not only was she good at teaching, but she was also very good at handling the town's political affairs. After chatting with her for a while, he decided to make her an important member of the town. In the United States, there was no clear relationship between towns, cities, states, and the United States. This was the organization of the United States government. Therefore, in the United States, the mayor of a small town, civil servants, and so on had a lot of power. Of course, this referred to the top few people. After feeling that Cindy Clive had great potential, Mayor Wallace was also training her. After the incident with the tourists for a few months, Cindy Clive had shown her ability to everyone. Just last month, when she was not so busy, Mayor Wallace had been training her. She was promoted by Mayor Wallace to be the town clerk. Of course, this position was not the same as the one in China, which had more power than the mayor. The main job of the clerk here was to record the big and small matters and proposals in the town. Of course, she also had another role, which was to monitor. She could record the good and bad sides of the town and then submit them to the higher-ups. It could be said that this position was definitely in the top 5 in the town. Because of this, she had a separate office. Looking at H20 Clive in front of him, Jiang Hai always thought of her at this time last year. "Are you done with your work today?" At that time, she had been the mistress of the Soaring Dragon Manor. However, at some point in time, she had deviated from the original plan. "I don't have much to do now. My main job is to help with the program and process. You know, this banquet is a big event for Mayor Wallace. Apart from the annual Sea God Festival, Winthrop hasn't had a Christmas banquet like this for more than 10 years. Now, all the big and small matters in the town have to be pushed back. This banquet is the most important thing." SH20 Clive smiled when she heard Jiang Hai's words. However, looking at her smile, Jiang Hai felt a sense of alienation. "Then let's go. I see a cafe with a good environment across the street. We can go and take a look." Maybe she felt that something was wrong between Jiang Hai and SH20 Clive, so Bernice immediately interrupted. Then everyone walked out of the town hall with a smile and went to the cafe across the street. After sitting down, Jiang Hai and the others also ordered some drinks and snacks. Jiang Hai did not like to drink coffee. Compared to coffee, he preferred to drink tea. However, there was no tea in the cafe, especially in an American cafe. Therefore, Jiang Hai only ordered a glass of juice. SH20 Clive and the others ordered a lot of things. After Jiang Hai paid, everyone sat there and talked. Bernice and the others had already explained their intentions on the phone, so SH20 Clive didn't need to be confused on the spot. After looking at the 5 people in front of her, SH20 Clive hesitated and said, "Originally, I also wanted to produce a show. My show was supposed to be a small stage play, but there was a shortage of people. When you said that you wanted to come, I thought of the roles for you." Looking at Bernice and the others' eyes, SH20 Clive thought for a while and said to them. Hearing that they were going to act in a stage play, the 4 girls couldn't help but look at each other. However, Jiang Hai's eyebrows twitched. "It seems that this project isn't a good one. Stage play. Isn't that acting under the eyes of others? It's full of shame. The stage play I want to act in is adapted from a cartoon. This cartoon is called Frozen. Do you know it?" Looking at the people in front of her, SH20 Clive asked them, but as soon as she finished asking, she was despised by Bernice. "Who hasn't seen this cartoon? Even if you haven't seen this cartoon, you have heard the song." After glancing at SH20 Clive with contempt, Bernice said with a smile, then sang Riley Dog, it should be translated like this. "Yes, it's this song. This is Xiaoya, right? Can you sing this song? I find that your pure white figure is very suitable for the role of Princess Elsa." Hearing Bernice's words, SH20 Clive didn't care. She smiled and stared at Little Ya. She saw Little Ya at Jiang Hai's place before. Originally, the script she prepared this time was not Frozen, but The Little Mermaid, but when she heard that Bernice and the others wanted to come to her to help with the show, she instantly changed it to Frozen, because Little Ya was really suitable. "Me? Can I?" She had watched Frozen before. Although the female lead was supposed to be her younger sister, Anna, the most outstanding part of the movie was actually Queen Elsa. She was not used to having such an important role as a newcomer. "Of course, you can try singing Riley Dog." Staring at Little Ya, SH20 Clive looked at her encouragingly. She glanced at her sister and Jiang Hai, and under their expectant eyes, little Ya also began to sing. The first line may be a little out of tune because she was a little nervous, but she quickly adjusted. Compared with Bernice's voice, little Ya's voice is indeed more clear and pleasant to the ears. Even the staff in the coffee shop looked over curiously after hearing little Ya's voice. Jiang Hai and the others were also very surprised. Although it was not to the extent of being shocked, little Ya's singing is really good. I didn't expect you to be a musical genius. Watching little Ya finish singing, Jiang Hai was the first to applaud and said with a smile, "It's perfect. You are the best candidate for Queen Elsa in my heart." Looking at little Ya, SH20 Clive also said with approval, "That's great, sister. You are going to be a queen. Then should I play Anna?" After patting little Ya, Bernice also said excitedly, but she was more concerned about her role. She and little Ya are sisters, and little Ya is playing Elsa, so she will play Anna. "No, I will play Anna. Look, my hair doesn't even need to be dyed." But SH20 Clive smiled and said to her, "What? What the hell is this? Then what should I play?" Hearing SH20 Clive's words, Bernice frowned slightly. "Delina, you will play Iceman Kristoff. This is the main role. Marion, you will play Hans, the prince of another country." But SH20 Clive ignored her and continued to talk to Delina and Marion. "What about me? What am I playing? No, there is no main role. You don't want me to play Snowbow, do you?" Out of the 5 people who came, 3 of them already had roles. It was impossible for Bernice to say that she wasn't anxious. She pointed at herself and asked anxiously, "You? There's no role for you, there's no role for you, and there's no role for Jiang Hai. Don't forget, you told Mayor Wallace that there would be 3 programs. I helped you solve one, so you have to solve the remaining 2 yourselves." But hearing what Bernice said, SH20 Clive suddenly laughed, then winked at Jiang Hai and Bernice. "Well, girls, you have to go with me in the afternoon. We have to find other actors. If the script is finalized, we have to order clothes and rehearse. I don't have much time." After that, without giving Jiang Hai and Bernice a chance, she left with Delina and Marion, as well as Xiao Ya, leaving only Jiang Hai and Bernice. How can they do this? Looking at the 3 people disappearing, Bernice couldn't help but look at them angrily. These guys actually left her and Jiang Hai behind. It was really too much. As for Jiang Hai, after being stunned for a moment, he continued to drink his juice. Looking at Jiang Hai, Bernice patted him on the shoulder and said with a headache, "You still have the mood to drink juice? I thought SH20 Clive was a lifesaver, but now she took my sister away. What show do you think we are playing?" If it doesn't work, we can just sing. After thinking about it, if you don't know how to act, then sing. This is also Jiang Hai's survival rule. It doesn't need to be amazing, but at least it's not too moving. This is Jiang Hai's idea. Sing. Sing what? Sing your iron pot. Bernice rolled her eyes at Jiang Hai and remembered the song Jiang Hai sang last night. What the hell is that? No, I learned another song from Nanuel last night. Shaking his head, Jiang Hai said with a serious face. Nanuel? You even know the songs from there? Looking at the serious Jiang Hai in confusion, Bernice's sixth sense told her that he was going to cheat her, but she still subconsciously asked out of curiosity. But after asking, she regretted it, but it was already too late. Yeah, it's like this, brace girl, but beauty. Sister has such a powerful asterisk. Go to hell. Chapter 647. What should we do? Leaning against his car, Jiang Hai looked at the sky and couldn't help but say helplessly. Just now, he and Bernice were chatting, but the 2 still had to think about the show. Unlike Jiang Hai's indifference, Bernice still had her own ideas. Since she agreed to go on stage and make a show, she would definitely go on stage. But considering that SH20 Clive didn't take her to play, she needed to think of other ways. According to her idea, it was better to go on stage to sing and dance, so after drinking coffee, she said that she was going to shop in the video store. Jiang Hai really didn't have any ideas about these places, so he originally wanted to go back directly. But Bernice said that it was okay to go back, and that he would pick them up in the evening. Considering that it would take an hour to come and go, Jiang Hai wouldn't be able to rest for a long time when he went back. He didn't plan to go back again. But it was also very boring to accompany Bernice to shop in the video store. What should I do? Make a show? Or do a crosstalk? Leaning against the car, Jiang Hai looked at the sky and muttered in a low voice. Hey, why are you here? Just as Jiang Hai was looking at the clouds floating slowly in the sky, suddenly a surprised voice sounded beside him. He looked back and found that the person who called him was no one else but Delia George. As soon as he saw her, Jiang Hai subconsciously wanted to run away, but he really couldn't run away. Because last time, something happened in the bathroom of Hodge Circe's house, and it wasn't a very good thing. At that time, he was also hot-headed and said that he wanted to integrate into American life. But this didn't mean that he could have no bottom line. Originally, if it was just for Kelly Solon, Jiang Hai might not be so passive. But the problem was that Delia had a boyfriend. Although Jiang Hai was not a good person, he was not a bad person either. So when he saw Delia, he felt that he was somewhat sorry for Baveda Jean Durat because he didn't seem to have any deep hatred with him. So since then, Delia sent him some messages, but Jiang Hai only replied at the beginning, telling her that it was not good for them to be like this, so it was better not to contact him. Delia may have also heard Jiang Hai's words, so she didn't contact Jiang Hai after that. But he didn't expect to meet her here. Come to think of it, Winthrop wasn't that big in total. Hey, why are you here? Since they met, Jiang Hai couldn't just turn around and leave, so he asked her with a smile. I came to town to buy these things. Isn't it going to be Christmas soon? I need to decorate it. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Delia couldn't help but smile and lift the bag in her hand, then said with a smile. Hearing what she said, Jiang Hai also glanced at it. It turned out that she wanted to take some pendants. In the United States, Christmas was a very important event, so if the family had the conditions, a Christmas tree must be made, and it must be a real tree. In the United States, soil erosion was not serious, at least in most places. Their forest vegetation area was extremely high, but they didn't care about some small Christmas trees that weren't very big. If the family had some conditions, they would cut one and go back to decorate it as a Christmas tree. With gifts and colorful lights hanging on it, it looked very festive. As for the type of tree, there was no requirement. Fir, cypress, pine, as long as it was evergreen and in the shape of a pagoda, it would be fine. The things hanging on it were also strange. Some of them were food, little candy, and so on, but there must be a lot of them. There must be carvings. This was the symbol of the United States. Other than that, there were some small toys. Jiang Hai saw a lot of people selling these in town. Oh yes, Christmas dinner. You are also going to attend it, right? Hearing her words, Jiang Hai immediately asked her. Of course, a few girls from our horse farm also came up with a show together. Horse riding dance. It's also from the East. My dad just killed him. When she heard Jiang Hai mention the dinner, Delia also said with a smile. Yes, I saw it the first time I saw old George. If your boyfriend dares to treat you badly, your dad will kill him. Haha, but then again, I also signed up to perform, but I don't know what to perform. Look at me. Do I have any advantages? Looking at Delia, Jiang Hai originally walked around in a circle. He was now in a desperate situation, so he asked her if she had any ideas. Your advantages? There are a lot: young, rich, good-looking, and good character. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Delia said, but the more she said, the darker Jiang Hai's head became. What's the use of saying these things? Ahem, let's say something that can be performed on stage. Do you think it's reliable? Looking at Delia in front of him, Jiang Hai said seriously. Something that can be performed on stage. Your basketball skills. After a little thought, Delia said with a serious face. Basketball skills? Hearing her words, Jiang Hai couldn't help but scratch his head. Now his basketball level is indeed like a fantasy novel. There is a fantasy basketball anime in Japan called Kuroko's Basketball. I heard that there are many gay novels on some websites in China. But those things were all fake. They were all nonsense. But with Jiang Hai's current technology, it was a little bit like that. For example, the three-point shot that covers the whole court. As long as he wants, he can throw the basketball into the basket from any position on the basketball court. For example, the absolute defense inside the three-point line. With his speed, his extreme speed is even faster than the ball. Even if he wants to fight a few people, if he only wants to defend inside the three-point line, then he is an invincible existence. Another example is deterrence. As long as he releases his dragon's might, well, it is actually a sense of spiritual energy that can intimidate the enemy. However, as long as he released his spiritual energy, it was very easy for him to make others fall. He could also dribble the ball over pretentiously and then point at his own defender. You will fall down, and then watch me score. Then, the other party would fall down directly, and he would rush to the basket. Now, these abilities that originally only existed in fantasy can be done now. He even tried to dunk from the three-point line when he was at home. This is not a problem at all. Moreover, he can dunk from the three-point line at a 720-degree angle, a windmill dunk at the three-point line, and a switch-hand dunk at the three-point line. Basketball was just a pastime for Zhang Hai last year, but he is not going to touch it this year. If it were not for those 2 basketball experiences, perhaps he would have passed the elite line by now, and he would not have to struggle so bitterly. Other than basketball? Scratching his head, Zhang Hai does not want to play basketball, even if it will intimidate the whole court. Other than basketball. What about Kung Fu? Listening to Zhang Hai, Delia also frowned because she did not know what to say. Other than knowing that Zhang Hai is good at basketball, she really does not know what other abilities Zhang Hai has. Then, her mind turned and she could not help but think of a rumor. It is said that in the distant east, people there all know how to practice Kung Fu. Zhang Hai is also from Huaxia. If he knows how to practice Kung Fu, perhaps it will be quite eye-catching. Kung Fu. Hearing her words, Zhang Hai's brows wrinkled. If it's Kung Fu, then he seems to know some. In addition to the fighting skills that Belle taught him, in fact, Zhang Hai also knows some Kung Fu. He mainly watched Bernice fight. Although Zhang Hai did not learn carefully, with his current brain capacity, as long as he wants to remember, it is not an exaggeration to say that he has a photographic memory. In addition, Azalina seems to know some Kung Fu. When the time comes, she just has to do some routines and so on. This is quite scary. Hey, I really didn't think of this. Thank you very much. This is a good idea. Looking at Delia, Zhang Hai clapped his hands and said resolutely. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Delia also smiled. She really did not think that Zhang Hai knows Kung Fu. Hi, Delia. But just as Delia wanted to say a few more words to Zhang Hai, a person came down from the driver's seat of a parked Chevrolet in the distance and shouted loudly to Delia. Zhang Hai also knew this person. It was Baveta Jean Darrow. After all, last time, Zhang Hai made him a little cuckolded, so after seeing him, Zhang Hai took the initiative to wave and then nodded. On this side, Baveta didn't know that he was being cuckolded. He called Delia because he saw Delia and Zhang Hai talking too much. Therefore, he took the initiative to call her Delia. But seeing Zhang Hai being so docile, he couldn't help but stare. Then he also nodded to Zhang Hai, but this action was somewhat stiff. Delia also stuck out her tongue at Zhang Hai. Although something that should not have happened between her and Zhang Hai had already made it very clear that he was not going to continue doing this with her. Since Zhang Hai was unreliable, she had to rely on her boyfriend. So she smiled mischievously at Zhang Hai, turned and ran to the front of the car in the distance. After saying a few words to her boyfriend, she waved to Zhang Hai and went back to decorate her home. After she left, Zhang Hai wanted to go back directly. Now, he finally thought of a solution to his performance problem. He really wanted to go back and learn, but just as he got in the car, he remembered that Bernice, Littleya, Daliana, and Marion were waiting for him to drive them back, so he couldn't help but sigh. They sat until around noon. Then Bernice returned to the car with a bunch of DVDs. According to her, not only did she want to sing, but she also wanted to dance. She wanted to impress everyone. Zhang Hai just shrugged his shoulders and let her be. Then he went to have lunch with her. Daliana and the others ate with Sage 20 Clive. They didn't come back until 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Fortunately, the DVDs that Bernice bought were all music videos of singing and dancing. Zhang Hai also accompanied her to watch them for the whole afternoon, so they weren't particularly boring. They were all English songs, but some of the singers were from Europe and America, and some were from Asia. For example, before this, Zhang Hai had always had some prejudice against South Korea. Many of the girl groups there had English specializations. He had to admit that these people really had nothing to do. The money in South Korea wasn't enough for them to earn, and they still wanted to come to America to earn money. However, based on the current situation, There were still a few South Koreans in America who acted in TV dramas and movies. As for singing, it seemed that there was only one Psy Uncle Bird, and he heard that he was about to be unable to make a living. As for the others like Bent Dead Dog, Thighs Era, and so on, they were all defeated. In fact, according to Zhang Hai's words, if they wanted to develop, the only way was to go to Huaxia. Although he didn't want to say it, that was the real place to earn money. As long as they were beautiful and sexy, there would always be people willing to spend money to listen to them sing and watch them act. Even if he didn't want to admit it, the number of fans in China was really not small. Pulling the topic back, the three girls were very excited when Xiao Ya and the others returned. This was their first time performing in a stage play. They heard that they had already found other actors to play the roles of snowmen, reindeers, snow giants, and so on. Now that the roles were confirmed, they still had to come over tomorrow to practice their lines and then rehearse. From today onwards, they would be very busy people. After Zhang Hai drove back to his house, he discussed with everyone. Zhang Hai wanted to learn martial arts from Azalina. He was really prepared to go on stage to perform martial arts. However, to his surprise, Azalina only knew how to kill people and not martial arts. Fortunately, at the crucial moment, there was still Bernice. When she heard that Zhang Hai wanted to go on stage to perform, she said that she would teach Zhang Hai the set of martial arts she knew. As for Bernice, she was still picking songs. The three girls wanted to go to town, but they didn't have a driver. In the end, Azalina took the initiative and said that she would protect them and be their driver. With Azalina around, Zhang Hai would be more at ease. The next day, when Zhang Hai came back from feeding Xiao Xia in the morning, there was only one of the 5 girls left in the house. "Come, get ready. It's time to start training," Bernice said seriously to Zhang Hai with headphones on and music on. "Any time." Looking at her, Zhang Hai also smiled. Then, he got into her starting position and looked at her with a smile. "Pretty decent. Then let's start. First move. Coiling Dragon and Tiger Distance." Seeing that Zhang Hai had assumed the starting position of her set of boxing moves, and it was exactly the same, Bernice couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. Then she chuckled. It seems that Zhang Hai had secretly learned a lot from her. However, it didn't matter even if he secretly learned. She didn't have any sectarian bias. Now, she wanted to see how much Zhang Hai could learn. Chapter 648. Ding Dong. Ding Dong. Listening to the doorbell, Zhang Hai and Bernice lay on the sofa without moving. After the bell rang 3 times, Bernice kicked Zhang Hai, who was lying on her butt, and signaled him to open the door with her eyes. "Why don't you go?" Seeing her eyes, Zhang Hai picked up a soft French fry, took a bite and said indifferently, "I'm not wearing a vest. It's a little exposed." Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Bernice said confidently. Hearing her words, Zhang Hai looked up, and sure enough, under the loose t-shirt, something that shouldn't be there appeared in front of his eyes. "Okay." Although unwilling to move, Zhang Hai shook his head helplessly and then stood up. He walked to the door and glanced at the person outside. It was a delivery man, so he put on his mountain lion coat and walked out in the wind and snow outside. Seeing someone coming out of the manor, the delivery man who was ringing the doorbell also stopped. After waiting for about a few minutes, Zhang Hai rode a 4-wheeled motorcycle to the front door. After opening the door, he smiled at the delivery man. "Mr. Zhang, Merry Christmas, this is your package." Seeing that it was Zhang Hai, the delivery man smiled and then took the initiative to hand over a small thing. Zhang Hai took the large rectangular box and frowned because he didn't seem to have ordered anything recently. Looking at the words written on it, it only said that it was a musical instrument, which made Zhang Hai a little confused, but the address was correct, and he didn't know who bought it. "Sorry to trouble you." After receiving the package, Zhang Hai checked it and made sure that there was no problem. Then he gave the delivery man a tip of $10. After receiving the tip, the delivery man was very happy. Generally, people would give $1 or $2, or at most $5, but Zhang Hai gave $10. He was indeed a rich man. After receiving the tip, the delivery man nodded excitedly and then drove away in his car. Zhang Hai returned to the villa. Walking into the house, Zhang Hai couldn't help shaking the snow off his body. Although he had only been out for a few minutes, he felt as if he was about to be frozen. Glancing at Bernice, who was still lying on the sofa, Jiang Hai couldn't help but roll his eyes at her. Then he hung his coat on the hanger and walked in with the things. Seeing Jiang Hai coming over, Bernice just squinted at him. "You got the things back, what is it?" Looking at Jiang Hai, Bernice said weakly. "I don't know, what musical instrument is written on it?" Listening to Bernice, Jiang Hai shook his head and said, "Oh, it should be Delina's. I heard that there was a broken musical instrument, so she used her pocket money to buy one. What a good child." Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Bernice couldn't help but laugh. She is a silly child, using her own money to buy a broken instrument. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai rolled his eyes at her, then put the things on the sofa next to him, then patted Bernice's leg, and habitually lay on Bernice's thigh. "What do you know, this is called collective. Besides, it's not like you can't get it back." Bernice rolled her eyes at Jiang Hai. She didn't understand why Jiang Hai was so stingy when he was so rich. She really couldn't figure it out. However, after listening to her words, Jiang Hai naturally didn't agree, but he didn't say much. If he said more, it would make him seem petty. He continued to lie on Bernice's lap, watching the TV in front of him. The TV was showing Mars Rescue. This was a new Hollywood film this year. There was no love or hatred in the film, and it was full of positive energy. After it was released in the United States on October 2nd, it achieved good box office results. It was said that it had also caused a lot of excitement in China. Many of Jiang Hai's friends have seen this movie, and the effect is quite good. Although Jiang Hai hasn't gone to the cinema to watch it. But now it has been taken off the screen. This is a paid channel, and any movie that is taken off the screen can be watched. Of course it costs money. However, Jiang Hai has the legendary annual membership, and he doesn't need to pay extra to watch these movies. As for the situation between Jiang Hai and Bernice at this time, it is also a little unclear. Today is already December 20th, and there are still about 4 days before Christmas Eve, which is the Christmas holiday. Jiang Hai has actually stayed at home for more than 10 days. It is only him and Bernice. Jiang Hai is practicing Bernice's martial arts. In fact, it is just for show. With Jiang Hai's brain, it only took him 2 days to remember it, and because he is stronger, his fighting is much better than Bernice's. Even the wind from the punches is quite scary, but Jiang Hai knows that the actual combat, cough cough, it is just that. If a woman learns it, it is good for self-defense, but if she really encounters an outlaw, then it is not enough. This was the Chinese martial arts that had been castrated. Some of the very sinister moves had all disappeared. Its only function was to strengthen the body, and not to fight on the battlefield. Jiang Hai had already learned it in 2 days. After Bernice chose a song, she also practiced dancing at first. Later, she felt that it was too troublesome, so she changed it to singing. After the accompaniment, she has nothing to do, but Xiaoya, Daliana, and Marian are busy every day. Because they were going to perform and cooperate, it was impossible for them to only practice a few times. The most important thing was that these 3 girls were quite excited. For them, being able to show off in front of people was an excellent thing. Jiang Hai didn't need to stop them. So these days, only he and Bernice are at home. Originally, the 2 of them are the kind of people who do not care about trifles. Bernice will stay at home with Jiang Hai every day. Because the 2 of them are bored, they will snatch food, drink, play, and even the sofa and TV. Later, the 2 of them will stay on the sofa together. Sometimes, Bernice will lie in Jiang Hai's arms, and sometimes Jiang Hai will lie on her lap. Maybe because they are too familiar with each other, the 2 of them do not have anything to be embarrassed about. The 2 of them maintain this posture while watching the movie. Not long after, the movie is finished. Bernice also sat up and stretched. She has not moved for more than 2 hours. "Oh, I finished watching another movie. What should I do? It's so boring." Looking at Jiang Hai, Bernice bent her leg and said to Jiang Hai with a helpless face. But listening to her words, Jiang Hai is also very helpless because he is also very bored. "Yeah, but what should I do?" After thinking about it, Jiang Hai looked at the ceiling. He really has nothing fun. Otherwise, let's play 3 Kingdoms. Looking at Jiang Hai, Bernice said seriously, 3 Kingdoms? Okay. Although he is extremely unconfident about his luck, Jiang Hai thought about it and agreed. Because he is also a little bored, when she heard Jiang Hai say yes, Bernice went upstairs and took out 3 kingdoms. Then she sat in the living room with Jiang Hai and prepared to play. They are playing a one-on-one mode, also called KOF mode. Each person has 5 cards, and each person chooses 3 cards. After the order is arranged, they start to play until one side has no one left and wins the game. Jiang Hai and Bernice are not playing for the first time. When Jiang Hai is shuffling the cards, Bernice is choosing the generals. Little Ya's set of generals is full of generals. Wind, fire, mountain, forest, special, Big Dipper, Earth Fiend, SR, divine generals, etc. Of course, there is no need to use divine generals in a one-on-one game, but there are more than 100 cards for generals. After all of them are done, each person is given 5 cards. Jiang Hai picked it up and looked at it, and he couldn't help but frown. How to say it? Heroes are more disgusting. Xu Guanyu, a red card killer, can be said to be the most useless character. Xu Lu Bei can give cards to anyone. If 2 or more cards can recover a bit of health, he can ask people from Xu to help him kill. But in a one-on-one game, what use is it? Give cards to the opponent? Wei Su Chu, when drawing a card, can deal twice the damage this turn, but in a one-on-one game, it is also useless. There is also Huang Gai, Taisher Ci. The specific skills are not written down, but they are all very weak in a one-on-one game. Looking at the cards in his hand, Jiang Hai sighed and chose 3 heroes. But when he saw the opponent's first hero, he was depressed. Zhen Ji, one of the bugged generals in the 3 kingdoms. She has the ability to draw cards infinitely at the start of the game. And today, Jiang Hai's bad luck seems to have reached a limit. In the first game, the opponent drew 23 cards, and in the original starting hand, there is a Zhuge repeating crossbow, and then there is no more and then. After a series of arrows, when her turn was over, Jiang Hai's third person only has 1 drop of health left. Then she drew 8 cards again, game over. In fact, sometimes it is that simple. The first loss, the second time Jiang Hai tried again, he still lost. The third time, he still lost. He lost until the 5th time, when Jiang Hai threw the cards in his hand into the deck. Jiang Hai was a little speechless. Ha 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 ha, you stinky hand again. Seeing Jiang Hai lose again and again, Bernice was very happy. Come, do you think I'm afraid of you? After losing again and again, Jiang Hai was also a little angry and shouted loudly. It's not fun to keep playing like this, why don't we bet something? Seeing that Jiang Hai was going to continue, Bernice said with a smile. Bet on what? Hearing the word bet, Jiang Hai's consciousness came back a little. He is a very careful person. Generally, he doesn't touch things that have the word bet. Just like in Atlantic City, when he entered the casino, he played very carefully. Let's bet. Head flicking? No, you are too strong. Otherwise, whoever loses will have to take off a piece of clothing. Looking at Jiang Hai, Bernice thought for a moment. Since they are going to play, then let's play more exciting. She doesn't have as much money as Jiang Hai, but it doesn't matter if she loses something else, especially taking off her clothes. Thinking about it makes her a little nervous. Take off my clothes? You can afford to lose. You only have 2 pieces of clothing. Glancing at Bernice opposite him, Jiang Hai said with a smile. Don't you only have 3 pieces? Great. Let your stinky hand take off a piece. Glancing at Jiang Hai disdainfully, Bernice said with a serious face. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai was also angry. Let's bet. I'm not afraid of losing. After the bet was established, the 2 shuffled the cards again and started playing. But when the cards were in his hand, Jiang Hai was speechless. Sure enough, this time, Jiang Hai lost the game without even seeing the third person on the other side. Take off. Looking at Jiang Hai, Bernice excitedly cried out. Hearing her cry, Jiang Hai thought for a moment. First, he took off his pants. Fortunately, his clothes were very big. When he took it off, it covered his lower body. Seeing this scene, Bernice couldn't help but give him a thumbs up. But Jiang Hai really did take off one of his clothes. The competition continued. But when the second game started, Jiang Hai began to scratch his head again. His luck didn't seem to improve because of the bet. This time, he lost even more miserably. He didn't even see the second person on the other side of Bernice and lost. This time he took off his clothes. Now, He only had his small flat top left. Looking at Bernice's smug look, Jiang Hai frowned. I have to think of a way, or I'll be stripped naked like this. Looking at the general cards in his hand, Jiang Hai's eyes suddenly lit up. Perhaps this will work. When Jiang Hai's attention was focused, the cards in his hand seemed to slow down a little. He remembered the order of each card very clearly. It was as if the more than 100 general cards were imprinted in his mind. As he continued to cut the cards, he was able to clearly remember the order of the generals. When he felt this, Jiang Hai couldn't help but laugh. After the general cards were handed out, Jiang Hai picked them up and smiled. God of Dual Pound, God of Point Kill Huang Zhong, God of Counter Injury Xiao Qiao, God of Scoundrel Hero Zhao Yun, and Huang Yueying, Wooden Ox. Looking at these people, Jiang Hai knew that he would win. On the opposite side, Bernice frowned. Obviously, her cards weren't very good. Let's start. With a happy smile, Jiang Hai picked up the card. It seems that in this game, because the general was good, his luck in the cards was also good. The cards in his hand were not particularly bad. With the general's bravery, Jiang Hai finally used the group of heroes, Zhao Yun, to complete the kill. Yeah, I won. With the first victory in this game, Jiang Hai also cheered loudly. Hey, what are you showing off for? You just won one game. Annoying. Bernice shouted when she heard Jiang Hai's words. Then she stood up, and in front of Jiang Hai, she gently bit her lip, and then took off her pants under her clothes. Chapter 649. Hey, I'm just joking. You don't have to really take it off. Seeing Bernice throw her pink-laced underwear aside, Jiang Hai panicked a little. He couldn't help but look at her carefully, and then glanced outside. If little Ya and the others come back at this time, it will be troublesome. I admit defeat. If you lose in the last round, I will also strip you naked, for sure. Looking at Jiang Hai, Bernice's fighting spirit continued to rise. Looking at her appearance, Jiang Hai couldn't help but feel that he was in a dilemma. Again. Looking at Jiang Hai's slightly hesitant look, Bernice shouted and the game continued. But unfortunately, Jiang Hai has mastered the method of cheating. How can Bernice win? Sure enough, the second round ended with Bernice's somewhat pale face. Jiang Hai once again finished with a wave of 3 kills. Damn it! After Bernice finished speaking, she was about to take off her shirt, but Jiang Hai waved his hand to stop her. Forget it. Let's stop here. You lose. Waving his hand, Jiang Hai said to Bernice. What? I can't afford to lose? But Bernice didn't appreciate it. Instead, after glaring at Jiang Hai, she took off her shirt directly. As soon as her shirt was taken off, Bernice appeared in front of Jiang Hai in an instant. Jiang Hai's eyes couldn't help but stare, but he subconsciously avoided it. Bernice's body, how should he say it? She was really beautiful, making Jiang Hai a little embarrassed. However, since the loser was stripped naked, the game was over. Cough, that's it for today. You should put on your clothes. As he said, Jiang Hai stretched out his hand and wanted to pick up the cards. Since the winner has been decided, Jiang Hai can't say anything. No, let's do it again. Looking at Jiang Hai, Bernice's eyes were red from losing so much. She shouted with a serious face. Cough, forget it. Hearing her voice, Jiang Hai smiled helplessly. What is this? It's clear that I won, okay? No, let's do it again. This time let's bet. Well, if you win, Aphrodite and the others will live in your room in the future, and I won't care what you do. After thinking about it, Bernice said seriously. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai's eyebrows couldn't help but raise. This bet can be established. After all, Jiang Hai also needs, but usually when Aphrodite and the others are here, Jiang Hai have no chance to go further, because Bernice's eyes. If she doesn't care about him, then it's good news. Then, let's do it again. Hearing what Bernice said, Jiang Hai took a deep breath. This time he must win. How is that possible? Of course, when Jiang Hai made up his mind to win, Bernice didn't have any strength left to resist. 10 minutes later, Bernice screamed. She really couldn't believe that she lost so badly. It was another triple kill, and she still hadn't seen who Jiang Hai's second opponent was. You said it, You don't have to care about my business in the future. Looking at Bernice, Jiang Hai said with a smile. For the happiness of his lower body, he has ignored Bernice's exposed parts. But then again, it's not like he hasn't seen these things before. Abominable, 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 let's do it again. Bernice said fiercely as she stopped Jiang Hai from packing up his things. But I don't want to gamble anymore. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai has already gotten what he wanted, and there's no need to play anymore. No, let's do it again. If I win this round, the previous one doesn't count. If I lose, I'll let you do that. Staring at Jiang Hai, Bernice said with a malicious look. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai couldn't help but grin. What the hell is this? I think it's better to forget it. No, I must play. Looking at the tough Bernice in front of him, Jiang Hai sighed. It seems that if he doesn't win this round, she will pester him endlessly. Thinking of this, Jiang Hai nodded. Since she is willing to die, then he is willing to bury her. Of course, Jiang Hai doesn't want to do anything with Bernice. This is not in line with his bottom line. Seeing that Jiang Hai agreed, he was about to shuffle the cards, but Bernice grabbed the cards first. I'll shuffle the cards, you shuffle these. Looking at Jiang Hai, Bernice said with a serious face. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai hesitated for a moment. However, he still shuffled the cards. He doesn't trust his stinky hand, but he can think of a way to get some good cards. Sure enough, after the cards were dealt, Jiang Hai found that 4 of the 5 cards were not suitable for a duel. Bu Lianshi, Zhang Liao, Liu Bei, Kai Wenji, and the only suitable one was Huang Zhong. Fortunately, he still had Huang Zhong. This is because he only needed Huang Zhong to play tricks on the cards. As he drew the cards, he attacked first. In the first round of 6 cards, 2 of them were made out of nothing, and 2 of them were made out of plum. In an instant, there were 10 cards. Then, he equipped a crossbow and reduced a horse, and the shameless killing began. Oh, how can this be? After 10 minutes, seeing that Huang Zhong still had 1 drop of blood left, but her 3 generals were all dead, Bernice couldn't help but throw away the cards and roar with a face full of anger. This is fate, Okay, quickly pack up and go to sleep. Listening to her roar, Jiang Hai smiled and then packed up his things. This time, Bernice didn't stop Jiang Hai from packing up the cards. It seems that she also admitted defeat. But when Jiang Hai put away the cards, he looked up and saw Bernice looking straight at him. What's wrong? Jiang Hai touched his face and said with a guilty conscience. Did she notice that he cheated? I admit defeat. Looking at Jiang Hai's puzzled eyes, Bernice said with a serious face. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai couldn't help but have a look of confusion on his face. Then he laughed at himself. This little girl is sometimes too serious. That's a joke. Okay, I'm going to take the things back. Waving his hand, Jiang Hai said with a smile. Then he was ready to stand up and put on his clothes, and take the cards back to little Ya's room. But before he stood up, Bernice had already pounced on him. In order to prevent Bernice from getting hurt, Jiang Hai didn't use much strength and was pushed to the ground by Bernice. But in front of Bernice's beautiful face, which was only a few centimeters away from him, Jiang Hai was a little confused. You can't be serious, right? It's not like you don't know my situation. I'll harm you. Looking at Bernice's serious expression, Jiang Hai's eyes were a little evasive, and then he whispered to her, but Bernice didn't give Jiang Hai a chance to say more. She lowered her head and kissed Jiang Hai's lips heavily. Her clumsy movements and excessive force let Jiang Hai know that she was not joking. She was serious, but what should he do if she is serious? I'm not afraid. What are you afraid of? About a few minutes later, maybe she felt that Jiang Hai was motionless like a dead fish. Bernice couldn't help but pat Jiang Hai's chest and said fiercely, then she bit Jiang Hai's ear. Of course, it was not an exaggeration to say that her bite was sucking. In an instant, Jiang Hai took a breath of cold air. The bottom line and the thoughts in his heart that he had been adhering to disappeared at this time. Since he was possessed by the Dragon Balls, Jiang Hai's resistance to temptation has really become worse and worse. His mind has been infected by some of the things inside the Dragon Balls. He didn't know whether his change was good or bad, but judging from Bernice's current direction, this was what she wanted to see. Feeling Jiang Hai's eyes getting redder and redder, and his big hands gradually moving, Bernice kissed Jiang Hai's lips again. After a long time, their lips parted. Jiang Hai turned around and pressed the naked Bernice under his body again. "Go to my room." Seeing that Jiang Hai wanted to go further, Bernice did not refuse, but said to Jiang Hai. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai carried Bernice up to her room on the second floor with the last shred of rationality left in his body. "Little Ya, your outfit today is really beautiful." Pushing open the door of the villa, Daliana said to Little Ya with a smile. "Yeah, unlike us we have to play boys. But even if we were to play Princess Elsa, we wouldn't be better than you. You didn't see the way those men looked at you. They were about to swallow you alive, hee." At this time, Marian, who followed in, also said with a smile. It was already 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and today's rehearsal had ended half an hour ago. Azalina was now responsible for picking up and dropping off the 3 girls. Because the rehearsal had just ended, they were still wearing their costumes. Daliana was wearing a gray jacket. She was playing the male lead of this stage play. Well, in fact, this play was a women's play, and the male lead was not very outstanding. Marian was playing the prince of the country. He was wearing a set of gorgeous European medieval aristocratic clothes, which really looked like a general attack. As for Xiaoya, who was walking in the middle, her clothes were much more extravagant than theirs. She was wearing a sparkling aqua blue dress. In addition to her special makeup and her originally white hair and face, she really looked like a character from a cartoon that had come alive. She gave off a very fairy-like and ethereal feeling. Not to mention men, even women would feel that she was very beautiful. Didn't Jiang Hai cook today? Hearing the 2 sisters' words, Little Ya was somewhat embarrassed, so she decided to change the topic. But when she looked up, she found that Jiang Hai and Bernice, who were supposed to be here, were not here at this time. Where did Jiang Hai and Bernice go? Daliana looked around and asked curiously. Well, there's a sound on the second floor. And just when the 3 girls were in a daze, Azalina, who had parked the car, walked into the room. As soon as she walked in, she also found that Jiang Hai wasn't there. She listened softly and heard a sound on the second floor. Hearing her words, the 3 girls looked at each other, and then the group of 4 sneaked to the second floor. As soon as they walked to the second floor, the sound became more obvious. And it seemed that this wasn't the first time they heard this sound. Among the 4 girls, Daliana, Marian, and Little Ya blushed instantly. Then, the group of 4 quietly went to the room where the sound was heard, which was Bernice's room. Looking at the unlocked door, they quietly pushed the door open a gap, and then the scene in front of them caused a huge shock to them. At this moment, the familiar Bernice and Jiang Hai were on the bed in Bernice's room. The 2 of them were hugging each other vertically. Bernice's body was tightly attached to Jiang Hai's body. Her 2 slender legs were wrapped around Jiang Hai's waist, and her 2 arms were also wrapped around Jiang Hai's neck. Her lips were connected to Jiang Hai's lips, and her lower body was constantly moving. Meanwhile, Jiang Hai's big hand was also covering Bernice's back, constantly exerting force. And with each impact of Jiang Hai's, Bernice's nose would let out some sounds that they could hear. At this moment, a puddle of blood had not completely solidified on the bedsheet under them, which meant that the 2 of them had not fought for a long time. At the sight of this scene, Delina, Marian and Xiaoya were all dumbfounded. Azalina reacted first as she covered Delina's and Marian's eyes. Closely after that, she took the 2 girls upstairs. After that, she came back upstairs and took Xiaoya downstairs. However, the scene just now was still a huge shock to the 3 girls. Although Daliana and Marian had seen Jiang Hai doing those indescribable things, they didn't expect that he would also do that with Bernice. After all, compared to Bernice, Daliana and Marian were not too familiar with each other. Now that Jiang Hai had already laid his hands on Bernice, would he do the same to them? They didn't know that Jiang Hai was actually a victim, but this didn't prevent them from imagining it. Thinking of this, the girls' faces turned red, especially Little Ya. Since Delina and Marian were still in name, Jiang Hai might not make a move. However, Little Ya was Bernice's little sister, and they were living together. If that was the case, then it would be dangerous. Seeing the dumbfounded looks of the 3 girls, Azalina didn't say anything. Because she had long regarded herself as Jiang Hai's woman. As long as he ordered her, she could climb onto his bed at any time. She didn't feel any psychological burden about the scene just now. Most importantly, She could tell that all the women in this room were really interested in Jiang Hai. Thinking about it, if he were to capture himself and the three girls, then the number of people around Jiang Hai would be increasing. Chapter 650. Christmas had arrived once again amidst thousands of cheers. This was Jiang Hai's second Christmas in Winthrop. Compared to the first Christmas, this one was much more fun. At least there were more people. Not only were there more people around him, but there were also more people in the manor. December 24th was Christmas Eve. According to the annual customs, this was also a holiday for all the major regions of the United States. Just like the Spring Festival in China, Christmas was also a holiday, and Christmas and the Spring Festival were connected. Therefore, during this period of time, the children would take at least half a month off, and some working adults would take about a week off. On the 23rd, a lot of people came to Jiang Hai's manor, including Philip Turner's two sons who had come last year. Last year, there were two couples, but this year, there was only one. The elder son still came with his wife, but the younger son had already broken up with his wife. Penelope also came, but she only came on the 23rd to take a look at Birkdollar and then left. Unlike Philip's two sons, they would stay here until the new year. On the 23rd, Jiang Hai held a party in his villa in the evening. It was not quite right to call it a party. It was more like an annual meeting. While summarizing this year, he also looked forward to next year. Of course, he would give year-end bonuses. In Jiang Hai's manor, although the fish hadn't been put on the market in large quantities this year, with the promotion of the tourists, he had made a lot of money from the lobsters. In 3 months, not counting the town's income, Jiang Hai had earned a total of $1.35 million from selling lobsters. Of course, in addition to lobsters, abalones, sea cucumbers, and the like were also included. Jiang Hai kept $1 million of the $1.35 million and gave the rest to the fishermen as a reward. Jiang Hai had a total of 5 sailors: Edward Anderson, Tommy Charles, Eleanor Cece, Andrew Christian, and Marlon Rupert. Each of these 5 men received $70,000. Of course, this money had to be paid in taxes, so it was up to them to decide what to do with it. When 7 checks were sent to the 7 men in envelopes, they were so happy that their eyes almost couldn't be seen. This was real money in addition to their salaries. They had barely done anything this year, and they had already earned almost $200,000. This kind of income was unimaginable in the past. The fishermen who had their own boats might not even have such a high income in a year, not to mention that they had to repair their boats, hire sailors, and pay higher taxes. Unlike the fishermen who made a pure profit. Therefore, they were looking forward to how high their income would be when they could start fishing in March next year. In addition to the sailors, Jiang Hai's ranch was the most profitable. Naturally, the cowboys were also the most important. Jiang Hai's year-end bonus was calculated based on the total income. The fisherman only made a little more than $1 million, and he received a round number. But the number on the ranch was a little bit higher. Last year, Jiang Hai sold a total of 12,459 cows, which was recorded in detail. The average price of each cow was $142,550, and the total income was $177,630,450. A lot of taxes had to be paid. The federal tax was 38.6%. In the eyes of his countrymen, George Bush was a jerk, but he was very popular in the United States. It was because after he took office, he gave the Americans a 0.5% tax cut. In the United States, taxes were divided into 5 categories, and the lowest category didn't have to be paid. After George W. Bush took office in 2002, different people paid different tax rates. Apart from those who didn't pay, some paid 27%, some paid 30%, and those whose annual income was more than $50,000 and less than $130,000 had to pay 35%. Jiang Hai's income was definitely more than $130,000, so he had to pay the highest tax rate of 38.6%. In addition to the 38.6% federal tax, he also had to pay a 2% Social Security tax. Whether or not he would enjoy Social Security in the United States in the future, he had to pay this money. There was also property tax, housing tax, and car use tax. Of course, these were all small sums. Like last year, the property tax was about $6 million, and the car use tax was a few $100,000. The state tax in Massachusetts was 5%. He didn't have to pay the local tax, because there was no local tax. That was to say, in April next year, Jiang Hai would have to pay 45.6% tax on his annual income. According to the figures reported by Moses Adams, the tax rate was about $809.87 million. Including the housing tax, it added up to about $815 million. But he didn't have to pay all of this money. Because the Federation encourages the farming of agricultural products, his tax rate was reduced by 3.5%. In addition, there was a 1.2% subsidy from the local government's manor, a 1.5% subsidy from the local government's fishery, a 2% subsidy from the federal government, a 2% subsidy from the federal government, a subsidy for farming, and so on. These things reduced Jiang Hai's tax rate by 8.5%. In other words, Jiang Hai only needed to pay a tax rate of 37.1%, which was more than $658 million. Including the housing and car, it was about $600 million, less than $70 million. Although it was still a lot, it wasn't bad. More than half of this money had to be handed over to the federal government, and about 30% had to be sent back to the local government. The state of Massachusetts accounted for about 20%, Boston for 5%, and Winthrop for 5%. According to Mayor Wallace, Winthrop would probably receive more than $30 million from Jiang Hai's taxes. It wasn't a problem at all to say that Jiang Hai had supported Winthrop. $30 million in tax revenue next year was a great thing. No wonder Mayor Wallace thought so highly of Jiang Hai. Of course, Jiang Hai couldn't give the cowboys a bonus based on the percentage of the fishermen's taxes. But it couldn't be a small amount. Jiang Hai had a total of 5 cowboys: Robbins Garcia, Burke Dollar, Philemon Turner, Harriman Fells, and Bell Lester. These 5 had earned more than $300,000 this year. Today, Jiang Hai gave each of them another $200,000. They had never even heard of an annual income of $500,000, let alone thought about it. Robbins Garcia and the others were very happy. Bell and Harriman were going crazy. Especially Bell. When he retired from Triangle State and became a cowboy, he was laughed at by many people. Although they didn't dare to laugh at him in front of his face, his reputation in the town wasn't very good. It wasn't until he met Jiang Hai that he knew what a real cowboy was. Seeing their father accept the check for $200,000, Philemon Turner's 2 sons couldn't help but feel jealous. But unfortunately, there were no other positions in the manor for them to join, and they regretted it. Why didn't they hug Jiang Hai's thigh last year? It was really a failure. In addition to the cowboys and fishermen, Jiang Hai also gave a lot of benefits to the others. For example, although Dulles Gerard and O'Connor Murphy hadn't produced any wine yet, they also worked hard this year. After the wine was produced, they would naturally get a reward. But this year, Jiang Hai also prepared a red envelope for them. A check of $50,000. Although it wasn't much, the 2 of them were very grateful. Aphrodite and the others naturally wouldn't be less. Each of them received $100,000. This made these girls gather together and start to discuss what to buy. Women all liked to be beautiful, especially when there was someone who liked them. Since that night, something that shouldn't have happened between Jiang Hai and Bernice. Although Jiang Hai was driven out of the room by Bernice in the middle of the night and rushed back to his room to sleep, as she said, she no longer cared about the matters between Jiang Hai and Aphrodite and the others. Aphrodite and the others could freely enter and leave Jiang Hai's villa and could also stay here at night. But every night, before Jiang Hai returned to his room, Bernice would ask him to go to her room and have a good talk. Aphrodite and the others didn't say anything about this because they didn't care about it. As for the 2 little rich women, Little Ya and Bernice, Jiang Hai didn't leave them behind. Their money was theirs, and Jiang Hai gave Jiang Hai. Little Ya was Jiang Hai's head chef, and she had been cooking for so long. Even if she didn't take credit, she still worked hard. Bernice is Jiang Hai's doctor here. Usually, if there's any headache or fever, they would come to her for treatment. So, Jiang Hai gave each of them a check. After all, the relationship between the 3 of them was a little ahem. So, Jiang Hai gave each of them $1 million. Bernice and Little Ya didn't stand on ceremony. Since Jiang Hai gave it to them, they accepted it. Azalina and Knerson Peters were Jiang Hai's bodyguards, so they naturally wouldn't be left behind. Azalina received $1 million in addition to her salary as a year-end bonus, and Conrad also received $1 million. But Conrad was a little confused after receiving the money, because he didn't know what to do with it. In the past, his money was controlled by his managers, who were his buddies. He was only responsible for boxing. He came here to find Jiang Hai to repay his kindness. Now that Jiang Hai gave him money, he really didn't know what to do with it. Usually, Jiang Hai would prepare food and clothes for him, and Jiang Hai would also prepare everything for him. Whether it was for sports or when he went out, all the daily necessities were very complete. So, even if he had money, he didn't know what to do with it. The only ones in the villa who didn't receive any money were Delina and Marion. Although they were already 15 years old, they would be 16 years old in a few days, they didn't help Zhang Tai at all. Of course, even if they didn't have money, they had a lot of gifts. After happily splitting the money, the festive atmosphere in Jiang Hai's group became even more intense. They had a good gathering on the 23rd. On the 24th, early in the morning, Jiang Hai and the others went to the forest and cut down a few small trees to make Christmas trees. After going back, they decorated the trees. With the help of natural energy, the trees in the forest grew very fast. The faster they grew, the faster they produced seeds. And the faster they produced seeds, the faster the forest covered. Jiang Hai also deliberately went to the forest when he was cutting down trees, but he only saw the mountain lion's family. Jiang Hai didn't see the water gloom or the crocodile. They might be hibernating. Jiang Hai was very clear that snakes hibernated, but did crocodiles hibernate as well? Well, let's just say that it hibernated as well. Anyway, he didn't see it. Although it was winter, the mountain lion's family had a good time. There were countless turkeys, pheasants, and hares in the forest. They were the only large predators, so they had plenty of food to eat. There was no need to worry about that. After spending the whole day decorating the Christmas tree, the 24th Christmas Eve arrived. Jiang Hai didn't say much about the origin of the 3 days of Christmas. After all, he already explained last year that Jiang Hai wasn't a religious person. In fact, no one in his villa was a religious person. Therefore, on Christmas Eve, they didn't go to Mass or anything like that. They just ate and drank together, and Christmas Eve passed. That night, Aphrodite and the others also stayed in Jiang Hai's villa. 8 people squeezed into the villa at once. The total number of people was in the blink of an eye. The next day was Christmas. When Jiang Hai walked under the Christmas tree in the morning, he found that it was full of gifts. This was also a Christmas custom for Europeans and Americans. They would give each other gifts. Jiang Hai naturally gave everyone a gift, and he also received a gift from everyone in his room. Delina gave him a pair of gloves, which she made herself. Although it was a bit rough, it was a kind gesture. Marion gave him a scarf, and Bernice gave him a leather hat. It was like the leather hat of Baldy Valiant in the domestic animation. It was very popular in the Northeast many years ago. Well, the specific time was probably during the period when the Heavenly King ruled over the Earth Tiger. Basically, everyone gave these small things because, to be honest, no one was short of money. It was unnecessary to give some precious things. Among the gifts, the most valuable one was Azalina's gift. She gave Jiang Hai an August magazine. However, it wasn't the 5-round magazine that Jiang Hai bought, but a 30-round magazine. One must know that it was impossible to buy a 30-round magazine in the US. In the black market, a 30-round magazine was much more expensive than a gun. Jiang Hai had a lot of money, but he didn't buy it. Regarding this gift, Jiang Hai was quite fond of it. He immediately went upstairs to grab a gun and went outside to shoot a bullet. Then everyone started to get busy, preparing for tonight's Christmas dinner. It was very important, just like the reunion dinner during Chinese New Year. Naturally, Jiang Hai's head chef, Xiao Ya, became today's head chef. Regarding this point, no one felt that there was anything wrong with it. However, while she was cooking, Xiao Ya kept glancing at Jiang Hai. Chapter 651. After Christmas, there was only the last day of the Christmas holiday left. It was December 26th, the Catholic Carnival. On this day, people who had been cooped up at home for the past 2 days would go out to the streets to get some fresh air. However, The town was quite lively that day because the banquet was about to begin. The auditorium for the banquet was in the town's school. In America, every school had an auditorium. Every year, during enrollment and graduation, there would be an assembly there. Winthrop was the same. Winthrop used to be a very big town. After all, when the fishing industry was flourishing and the West was still the wilderness, the East area near Boston was where the rich lived. According to Mayor Wallace, when he was young, Winthrop's population was close to 10,000. At that time, Winthrop's fishing boats were all over the river. Of course, there were also a lot of codfish. People could even walk to Europe on the backs of codfish. Of course, this was all nonsense. People who believed it were crazy. However, it was undeniable that when the fishing industry was not so liberalized, there were indeed many people in Winthrop. In fact, this was also related to the American national policy. Around 1960, the United States entered a period of rapid development. The new generation of young people grew up after World War II. After World War II, the United States was already the world's largest country. This allowed the Americans, who had been suppressed by the Europeans, to be extremely indulgent and liberated. The new generation of young people grew up. They did not have international pressure, so it created a crazy social situation in the United States from the early 1990s. During that time, the United States industry was developing rapidly, and people's moral bottom line was constantly being refreshed. According to statistics, the young people in the United States during that time were quite chaotic. It was even more chaotic than in China now. Drugs and things between men and women were quite common in the United States. According to current scholars, that was the time when the Americans liberated themselves. It was also the time when the incidence of AIDS in the United States was the highest. People who paid attention to the NBA would know that the private life of the NBA players at that time was also very chaotic. First, there was Zhang Wanqian, who claimed to be able to kill 20,000 people. Later, there was the magician Elvin Johnson, who was unfortunately chosen. Because people were in chaos, there was a large number of newborns. Around 1980, these newborns grew up and they also needed to work. At that time, the Western United States was not as developed as it is now, so a large number of labor forces poured into the Eastern United States. Although Winthrop wasn't a big place back then, it was still much better than the cities in the West. Therefore, a large amount of labor force poured in. However, with the development of the West, the amount of fish in the Atlantic Ocean decreased, and the pollution became more and more serious. Since entering the new century, Winthrop had become a lot more deserted. After entering 2005, the town became a bit gloomy. Originally, the town had a population of tens of thousands, but after entering the year 2000, there were less than 3,000 people left. After 2005, there were less than 2,000 people left. Now, there were only slightly more than 1,000 people left. However, with the development of the town's tourism industry, the population would gradually return. After all, people relied on money to survive. Wherever there was money to be made, they would go there. This was inevitable. After saying so much, there was actually one point. The location of the banquet was the auditorium of the small school. The auditorium was built in 1987, when Winthrop was still a big place. Therefore, it was not a problem to accommodate thousands of people. The auditorium was divided into two parts. The first part was the main venue, where the performances were. The second part was a buffet area, where the gathering would be held later. In the morning, Jiang Hai and the others had already gone to the venue to prepare for their own performances. Jiang Hai's and Bernice's programs were actually small programs. Jiang Hai's program might be more important. As for Delina's program, it was a big show. It was arranged to be last. At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the program officially began. Following the announcer's announcement, the performances started one by one. Jiang Hai's performance was quite advanced. It was the third performance. This was also because he didn't want to delay his performance. Hence, after he went up, he did a round of boxing. His boxing was vigorous and vigorous. The audience below also cheered thunderously. Although they couldn't understand it, no matter where they were, they would feel that it was awesome even though they didn't understand it. Jiang Hai was having fun, and he even deliberately performed a wall walk. Of course, it was not like in the movies. He was just physically superior. He did not really have any internal energy. Therefore, he just walked along the prepared plank for a while, and then flipped over a 7-meter high plank. In fact, if Bale was prepared, he might be able to do it. But in the eyes of the audience, it was quite magical. When Jiang Hai went down, it was not an exaggeration to say that it was thunderous cheers. Jiang Hai also happily bowed to the audience to express his gratitude. Then he went down to his seat in the first row, sitting between Mayor Wallace and Murray Smith, and watched the performance. Of course, the three of them were not only talking about the performance, but also about the new wave of Winthrop strategies after spring. The success of the season last autumn made the two old men very optimistic about the future of Winthrop. In their view, the town would make more money next year. In addition, in April, Jiang Hai would pay tens of millions in taxes to the town, and the town's finances would be greatly relieved. At that time, they would be more confident. With money in their pockets, naturally, they would not panic. This was inevitable. After they talked for a while, it was time for Bernice's solo. Bernice had been choosing for many days, and the song she finally chose was also a very popular song this year. This was the theme song of a movie, Fast and Furious 7. It was created to commemorate the second male lead of the Fast and Furious series, Paul Walker, although singing this song at a carnival was somewhat inappropriate. However, the atmosphere was still very good. After singing this song, Bernice went to the stands and sat behind Jiang Hai. She naturally put her hand on Jiang Hai's shoulder. Since that night, although the relationship between Bernice and Jiang Hai remained the same on the surface, and Bernice did not even think of herself as Jiang Hai's girlfriend, the two of them were becoming more and more intimate. Regarding Bernice's change, the people in the villa more or less had some reaction, but the people outside did not seem to have any reaction. After all, in the eyes of outsiders like Mayor Wallace and the others, in their eyes, Bernice and the others were probably Jiang Hai's women. Otherwise, why would Jiang Hai support them like this? In America there was no such thing as support. Men and women were equal in some things. Men earned money, and women also earned money. It did not mean that after becoming a couple, the man had the obligation to spend money to support the woman. This did not make sense in America. Being a housewife was actually also a profession. They would work and work at home in exchange for living at home. It was not like the idea in China. When they were boyfriend and girlfriend, it was even more so. Therefore, in their eyes, since Bernice and the others were living in Jiang Hai's house, they were probably already Jiang Hai's people. Therefore, when they showed a little more intimacy, they felt that it was normal. There was no different feeling. As they talked and chatted, unknowingly, it was already the last program, Frozen. Although Jiang Hai had seen the movie version of this cartoon, watching Shenty Clive and the others acting was quite interesting. Especially when Xiaoya came out, it was really breathtaking. The people below couldn't help but let out a wow sound. The most important thing was that Xiaoya's voice was very good. When she sang Riley Dog, many people in the audience sang along. With the final ending, the audience was also thunderous cheers. Then, the main cast went on stage and bowed. Mayor Wallace also announced that today's banquet had officially begun. With everyone's cheers, everyone walked into the auditorium and began to enjoy their banquet. However, halfway through the meal, a snowstorm suddenly blew up outside. It was a good thing to snow on Christmas Day. Seeing this scene, some people who lived far away prepared to go back first. If the snowstorm got bigger, it would be troublesome. However, Jiang Hai did not care. Today most of the people in his manor came, so he drove a lot of cars. Jiang Hai's shield and his 3 pickup trucks. With these 4 cars, even if they used knives, they could still go home. Therefore they didn't mind and continued to eat, laugh, and chat. But at this moment, a police siren suddenly came from outside. Then, a police car suddenly drove over from a distance and stopped at the entrance of the auditorium. Then, a young police officer ran in from the outside in a sorry state. As soon as he came in, he attracted the attention of many people. As the chief of the police station, Maris Smith naturally reacted and immediately walked in front of him. "What's the matter?" Looking at the person who rushed in, Maris Smith asked anxiously. "Huff, huff, there is news from Boston, saying that the deer in the Alabama mountains have rioted. They are now going down the mountain, and one of them is moving in the direction of Winthrop." Looking at Maris Smith, the young police officer took 2 deep breaths and said anxiously, "What deer rioting?" Hearing this news, Maris Smith's face could not help but have a thin layer of sweat. This is too unlucky. How can the deer rioting? I remember that there hasn't been a riot for more than 10 years. Hearing the sound here, Mayor Wallace also came over anxiously and said nervously. It seems that, in their view, the deer rioting is a big deal. In recent years, the local government has been paying attention to environmental protection. The vegetation in the Alabama mountains should be intact. The deer shouldn't be rioting. Morris Smith said hesitantly after hesitating for a moment. I heard it's the Canadians. One of their villages was destroyed by deer herds, so they formed a team to hunt deer in the mountains. They chased the deer herds from the Canadian side of the Alabama mountains to the United States. The ecological environment here can't support so many deer. In addition, the snow this year is especially heavy, and the mountains are sealed. The deer herds have nothing to eat, so they can only come down the mountain. Hearing what Mayor Wallace said, the young police officer couldn't help but say helplessly. Hearing his words, many people in the room expressed their anger. Those Canadian country bumpkins. Even Morris Smith couldn't help but curse after hearing the news. Although Canada is the little brother of the United States and Canada is the backyard of the United States, in fact, Americans and Canadians are basically in a state of mutual dislike. Canadians don't like Americans, and Americans don't like Canadians. Most of the Canadians are descendants of the British and French. They are different from the prisoners on the June flower ship that came to North America. Most of the people on their side were later immigrants from the British government when they colonized the United States. There are also some defeated soldiers and their families. In their eyes, the adventurous spirit of the Americans is rude, brainless, and unwise. In the eyes of the Americans, most of the adults are pretending to be noble and polite, but in fact, they are a group of cowards. Of course, this is a bit too one-sided, but this is like the legendary regional dog. The two countries were the same pants on the official side, but among the people, they don't get along well with each other. Of course, it is fine in the big cities, but in smaller places, there will be some friction. Obviously, Winthrop is not a big place. Wallace, it looks like we can only end tonight's banquet here. Turning his head, Murray Smith shrugged at Mayor Wallace Covey, indicating that the banquet had to end early. Although he was somewhat unwilling, he still arranged for it to be first. I know. The deers coming down the mountain is not a joke. Everyone, we may have to stop here tonight. Now, let's pack up and go home. Unless it's a last resort, don't go out for the time being. Hearing Morris Smith's words, Mayor Wallace also raised his hands and said loudly to the people around him. Hearing Morris Smith's words, most people nodded and then began to walk out, but there are some young people who are a little confused, such as Zhang Hai. Chapter 652. Isn't it just deer? Why are you so cautious? When everyone was ready to leave, Zhang Hai walked over and looked at Mayor Wallace with some confusion. Deer? He had hunted deer in the mountains before. Deer were very timid, but they were very curious. That was a roe deer, but a roe deer was also a type of deer. So in Zhang Hai's view, it was just deer going down the mountain. Was there a need to make such a big fuss? Not letting people out on the street? Was this thing dangerous? He had never heard of deer eating people. Anyway, no matter what other people thought, Zhang Hai felt that they were making a big fuss out of nothing. Hey, Zhang, you haven't experienced a deer riot. It's very scary. Hundreds of thousands of deer, with their heads down, no matter what is in front of them, they will crash into it. People, cars, even armored vehicles, will be overturned. It's extremely dangerous. When he heard Zhang Hai's words, Mayor Wallace sighed. Zhang Hai was still young. Sometimes his thinking was too simple. When he heard what Mayor Wallace said, Zhang Hai imagined it. If that was the case, it would be quite scary. Yeah, I remember when I was young, there were often deer disasters in the town. That was because we destroyed the vegetation in the Alabama mountains at that time. The deer had nothing to eat, so they would come down the mountain to look for food. But at that time, our solution was very simple. We used machine guns to shoot all the deer, and that was it. Touching his chin, Murray Smith heard his words and could not help but sigh. Then we have to shoot them now. Hearing that there was a solution, why not do it? Zhang Hai did not understand. That was when I was young, that is, 50 years ago. Since 20 or 30 years ago, the Federation banned the random hunting of wild animals, and no one dared to do so. If you dare to do so, the Nature Animal Protection Agency will not mind taking you to court. Moreover, this kind of thing will be confirmed. Whoever fired the gun will go to jail. At the same time, it will also have a huge international impact. Think about Japan's whale hunting and their dolphin slaughter. The international impact is huge. If it were not for the United States standing firmly behind them, they would probably become the world's common enemy again. Looking at the doubt on Jiang Hai's face, Mayor Wallace sighed. Although a herd of deer is not a whale or a dolphin, if someone were to expose this matter, he would lose his position as mayor, and Murray Smith would also lose his job. Not to mention tourism, the town would probably not have any tourists in the future. And the most important thing was that whoever shot the gun would probably stay in prison for the rest of his life. The UA did not have life imprisonment, and there was no prison limit. Hunting deer would not be sentenced to death. But illegally killing a deer with a hunting license, you can kill a few, but you need to register, would be sentenced to 3 years in prison. Killing 10 would be 30 years. Just now, Murray Smith said that there were hundreds and thousands of them, which meant that he might be sentenced to thousands of years in prison. Even if it was someone like Jiang Hai, if he went in, he would probably spend all his money and he would not be able to come out in a few years. 20 or 30 years in prison would be considered a mercy. Hearing Mayor Wallace's words, Jiang Hai could not help but sigh. How cruel. It seemed that in the UA, the rich were not so free. But fortunately, he did not have any thoughts about these wild animals. Ever since the Federation banned deer hunting, we can only use shotguns to attack every time there's a stampede. The defense is indeed not as good as before, and many people are injured or even killed every time. I don't know if it will be the same this time, but there's one good thing. The government will pay for all the damage caused by the deer. Alright, Jiang, you should go back first. Although we can only use shotguns to protect you, there are no restrictions on you in your manor. Be careful at night, and if there's a herd of deer appearing, just shoot them to death. Looking at Jiang Hai, Murray Smith said seriously. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai also expressed that he understood. After exchanging a few more words with Mayor Wallace and Murray Smith, the two of them also went to work. As for Jiang Hai, he found some people who were still in a daze. After explaining the situation to them, they were ready to leave. Today, almost everyone in Jiang Hai's manor was here. Only Burke Dollar, Connerson Peters, Dulles Gerard, and O'Connor Murphy stayed in the manor. After receiving the money on the 23rd, they left on the 24th to go back to Europe for Christmas. Jiang Hai put them on the 15th of January next year, which was also a long holiday. Except for the 4 of them, everyone else came. Because the 2 of them were both single, and one of them didn't like to join in the fun, and the other only liked to practice martial arts and didn't want to watch shows, it was best to let them stay here. Other than that, everyone else came. Jiang Hai, Daliana, Marion, Bernice, Little Ya, Azalina, Aphrodite, Dinah, Hilda, Becky, Sheila, Ohilia, Bridget, and Janice made up of 14 people. In addition to Robbins Garcia, Philemon Turner's family of 5, Harriman Fells, Belle Lester, and Edward Anderson was 1, Tommy Charles was 2, Eleanor Cece was 3, Andrew Christie was 2, and Marlon Rupert was 1. In total, there were 17 people. If they wanted to leave, it would be a little troublesome. Fortunately, Jiang Hai drove a lot of cars. 2 F-750S, 1 F-650, and 1 Braille Aegis. Although these cars had a standard seating capacity of 5 people, they could seat more than 5 people. In the absence of traffic police, the F-750 had 1 driver's seat, 1 co-driver's seat, and at least 5 people in the back. If they were thin women, it wouldn't be a problem to seat 6 people. After all, the car was wide enough, and with the bucket at the back, they could seat as many people as they wanted. In Winthrop, traffic police wouldn't check Jiang Hai because of this. In order to take care of Jiang Hai's girls, Aphrodite, Dana, Hilda, Paige, Sheila, Asheria, Bridget, and Janice sat in the back of an F-750. One of them sat in the front passenger seat, while the other sat in the F-750. Belle Lester, Harriman Fells, Robbins Garcia, and Edward Anderson, who weren't afraid of the cold, sat in the bucket at the back. In short, the 3 cars were full. Jiang Hai, Little Ya, Bernice, Daliana, Marion, and Azalina were preparing to leave in Jiang Hai's Aegis. After everyone got in the car, they rushed to Jiang Hai's manor. However, when they were about to reach the manor, Bernice suddenly shouted from the car. "Where's little Ya?" Hearing Bernice's shout, Jiang Hai also suddenly found that there should be 4 people sitting in the back, but there were only 3 at this time. He immediately used the walkie-talkie in the car to ask the 3 cars in front to see if they had found little Ya. As a result, little Ya was indeed not there, and there was no one in the 3 cars in front. This shocked Jiang Hai, and Bernice wanted to go back directly to find little Ya. Call her immediately and see where she is. Fortunately, Jiang Hai was not completely numb and immediately said to Bernice. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Bernice also immediately called little Ya. Fortunately, little Ya picked up, which made everyone feel relieved. However, little Ya was still in the town's auditorium at this time. It turned out that when she was performing, she accidentally scratched her clothes at the back of her waist. Because of her personality, after the performance, she did not directly change and go to the auditorium to eat. Instead, she went backstage and found Shenty Clive. After getting some needle and thread, she was mending her clothes there, but her mending speed was really not fast. She didn't hear the commotion outside. Indeed, the banquet was chaotic as well. "Are we going back to pick up little Ya?" Hearing that Xiaoya was still there, Penny let out a sigh of relief, but at the same time, she was a little worried. "It's fine as long as you know where she is. We will be at the manor soon. After I send you back to the manor, I will pick her up again." Knowing that she was fine, Jiang Hai also breathed a sigh of relief. Looking at the distance, it was less than 5 minutes away from the manor. Instead of going back now, it was better to send the girls to the place first and then go there with Jiang Hai. For Jiang Hai's decision, Bernice did not object. Because she knew that Jiang Hai was right. It was really too troublesome to go back now. If it was just Jiang Hai, the speed might be faster. The 5-minute drive was still very fast. Not long after, Jiang Hai parked the car outside his manor and did not go in. After all, Bernice and the others were still very anxious. After leaving them at the manor's door and letting them go in by themselves, Jiang Hai hurriedly turned the car around and ran back. Indeed, as Bernice said, when there were 5 of them in the car, Jiang Hai did not dare to run too fast. After all, if there was an accident, it would be troublesome. When there was only himself, Jiang Hai's speed was obviously increased to a limit. Because his reaction speed was 4 times the limit of a human. Jiang Hai returned to the auditorium in less than 20 minutes without slowing down during the half-hour drive. At this time, the auditorium had long been empty, leaving only little Ya sitting there in a daze. "Phew, I finally found you." Looking at little Ya sitting there quietly, Jiang Hai let out a sigh of relief. "I really troubled you." Seeing Jiang Hai coming, little Ya couldn't help but stand up and say apologetically, "What trouble are you talking to me about? Really, let's go." And wait a minute. Didn't you eat just now? Hearing little Ya's words, Jiang Hai rolled his eyes at her and was about to pull her away. But just as he was about to leave, he found that the food in front of little Ya was still neat and tidy. It seemed that this girl did not eat when she was waiting for him to come over. "No, I have been thinking about things, so I didn't have time to eat." Hearing Jiang Hai's words, little Ya stuck out her tongue and said quietly, "Really?" Hearing little Ya's words, Jiang Hai saw her backpack. This backpack was filled with costume. If it were not for this thing, she would not have been left here. He opened the backpack and put some cold food in it, mainly meat and the like. Of course, they were all wrapped in plastic bags. Then he pulled her away, got in the car, and threw the backpack in the back seat. Jiang Hai started the engine and headed in the direction of the manor. But as soon as the car started, the originally not small snowstorm seemed to be getting bigger and bigger. Every household in the small town had turned off their lights. Even the police station was not prepared to make a move tonight. Because of such a big snowstorm, people would not be able to stand it in the snow. As for the deer, they would think about it tomorrow. F***CK, is there a mistake? So unlucky? After changing the low beam to high beam, Jiang Hai also saw what the creatures in the distance were. He slowly stepped on the brakes and stopped the car, but Jiang Hai's forehead was already sweating because these creatures were none other than the creatures he heard from Mayor Wallace and Director Morris just now, deer. When Jiang Hai discovered the deer also discovered them. Although Jiang Hai only glanced at them, he was able to roughly see the number of deer. There were at least a few dozen, maybe even 100. Most of them were female deer, but the leaders were male deer. In the middle of the herd, there were also some fawns. Most importantly, there were all kinds of deer. White-tailed deer, reindeer, camel deer. Deer did not have night vision. Now that they were in a circle, this might mean that they were preparing to sleep. However, Zhang Hai's headlights flashed. Not only did he see them clearly, but he also gave them a fright. The originally rampaging deer were abnormally irritable. Now that they saw Zhang Hai, they became even more irritable. In this herd of deer, many adult deer took the initiative to walk over and lowered their heads on the road in the distance. This was the posture when the deer were preparing to charge. Seeing this, Zhang Hai could not help but nervously swallow a mouthful of saliva. He remembered what Mayor Wallace and Sheriff Morris had said. These rampaging deer could even overturn armored vehicles, let alone ordinary vehicles and people. What's more, his was just a civilian armored vehicle. The situation was really hard to predict. What do we do now? Looking at the nervous Zhang Hai, Xiaoya could not help but hold Zhang Hai's hand and asked carefully. Chapter 653. Phew, hold on tight. Feeling little Ya's nervousness, Zhang Hai grabbed her hand and placed it on the handle on her upper right. He knew that it was too late to return to the town now. In such a snowy day, and the snow was getting heavier and heavier, his car might not be as fast as these deer. Instead of luring these deer into the town, it was better to fight. When enemies meet on a narrow path, the brave will win. At least, Zhang Hai thought so. Looking at the deer in front of him, Zhang Hai turned on the headlights again. He wanted to force his way through. Although it was a deer and not a cow, it was indeed the sound of a deer's moo. Following the moo of the largest buck, the herd of deer that had already set up a formation quickly rushed toward Zhang Hai. Looking at the herd of deer rushing over, Zhang Hai also stepped on the accelerator. A car with about 30 bucks was approaching quickly. When the deer's speed reached its limit, Zhang Hai's speed also reached about 100 kilometers. Bang bang! At the moment of contact, there was a loud noise. The first deer hit the front of Zhang Hai's car. The hard antlers instantly broke Zhang Hai's headlights, but the impact of the car also broke its antlers instantly. The entire deer's body was lifted up by the car and slammed heavily into Zhang Hai's windshield. Then Zhang Hai found that the windshield in front of him was already full of cracks. But Zhang Hai didn't stop. Instead he sped up, but these deer were now crazy. They didn't care whether Zhang Hai would stop the car or not. The only thing they wanted to do was to rush forward. Rush forward. All the deer had bloodshot eyes. Not to mention a car in front of them now. Even if it was a Tyrannosaurus, they would still rush over. Clang 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 clang. One after another, the sounds of impact, as well as the pitiful cries of the deer in the distance, entered Zhang Hai's ears. However, he didn't have any fluctuations in his heart, because he knew that if he didn't fight back, then he would die. In his Virgin Mary mode, he only had some influence on his morals. When it came to his own life, he wouldn't have any thoughts about the deer now. He didn't have a machine gun now. If he did, he wouldn't mind getting rid of all these deer. The impact and quality of the shield was indeed incomparable to that of natural creatures. Even if Zhang Hai was facing a polar bear, he could still easily send it flying, let alone these deer. So it didn't take long, maybe 10 or 20 seconds. Zhang Hai was stunned for a moment. Then, after a short while, maybe 10 or 20 seconds, Zhang Hai felt that his car had hit at least 10 deer. After that, he found that the deer that hit his car had disappeared. The window in front of him was completely shattered. The deer's blood was plastered on the car, making Zhang Hai completely unable to see the situation in front of him. But at this time, he could only run until the end of the road, but his heart was more or less clear. After hitting the male deer, it should be the female deer and the young deer. As long as he hit these deer, he would have a chance to return to the manor. But at this time, Zhang Hai suddenly saw a figure appear on the side of his car. Seeing the figure getting closer and closer to Xiaoya in the car, Zhang Hai also panicked. It seemed that at this time, he also forgot that his car was bulletproof. Be careful! With a shout, he only had time to stretch out a hand to protect Xiaoya's head. Then, he felt a huge force coming. Then the car that was still running on the road was hit by the deer and flew out. Of course, this was also related to the slippery snow on the ground, but in any case, the car was indeed pushed out. And most importantly, Jiang Hai still couldn't see the situation in front of him. He couldn't let go of the accelerator because if he did, he would be attacked by the deer. He didn't know how long his car could be pushed out. Now, he needed to rush out of the encirclement of the deer, but suddenly, he felt a sense of weightlessness. At this time, Jiang Hai wanted to control the direction, but it was too late. After the car rushed out for about 10 seconds, Jiang Hai saw a black shadow flash in front of him. The next second, there was a super loud sound. Bang! Jiang Hai's mind only flashed one thing. Maybe it hit a tree. Then, the airbag in front of him instantly popped out. The hot air with the soft cloth slammed heavily on his face. Not only did it burn his face, but it also stunned him. In an instant, Jiang Hai's ears buzzed. In addition, his head was also stunned. His whole person seemed to have fainted in an instant. About a minute later? It could also be 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or an hour. Jiang Hai already had no concept of time. Who the F***CK? Holding his forehead that was still a little painful, Jiang Hai shook his head and forced himself to calm down. He glanced at Xiaoya next to him. Xiaoya was directly knocked out by the airbag, but although her face was a little red, her breathing was still stable. This made Jiang Hai breathe a sigh of relief, but she didn't show any signs of waking up. After taking a few deep breaths, Jiang Hai slowly calmed down, and then began to check his current situation. Now, Jiang Hai's face was no longer hot, which meant that a period of time had indeed passed. Instead, it was a little cold. This was because in the corner of the front glass, there was a gap. He had to admit that this car was really sturdy. Even so, the glass didn't break even a small piece. Instead, it was the gaps on both sides of the glass that couldn't hold on. The cold wind kept pouring in, and it seemed that this collision also damaged Jiang Hai's car engine. In fact, it was indeed broken. Because of this collision, the antlers that were inserted into the partition just now were knocked straight into it. The antlers easily broke the metal outside the engine, and now the engine can no longer be started. Moreover, there was a burst of gasoline smell coming from the engine. I still have to come out first. After taking a deep breath, Jiang Hai whispered in a low voice. Although it was a collision, the probability of the car exploding was quite low. It was not like in the movies where as long as the car flipped and crashed, it would inevitably explode. However, nothing was certain. It was better to be careful. But if he wanted to leave, where to? This was a very troublesome problem. He glanced at the window on his side. Fortunately, the window on his side was not broken. He opened the window and looked outside. The wind and snow outside were getting heavier and heavier. Vaguely, there seemed to be a small house in the distance in the snow. This was also thanks to Jiang Hai's excellent eyesight. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to see it. He glanced at his phone. In such a big snowstorm, there was naturally no signal, but the map in his phone could still be used. Although there was no way to update and start the GPS, the original map was still there. After opening the map, he took a careful look. After finding his position, he glanced at the front. Indeed, there should be a small house there. It belonged to the Contley family in Winthrop Town. This family sold fruits in the town. They had a piece of land dedicated to planting fruit trees. Now, his position should be in the orchard of his family. As for the small house, it was used by their family to look after the orchard. The relationship between Jiang Hai and their family was not bad. They had met a few times and talked a little. They were not very familiar with each other, but they were not particularly unfamiliar either. Let's go and see the situation first. After stretching his neck, Jiang Hai unfastened the seatbelt and climbed to Xiaoya's side. After unfastening her seatbelt, he called Xiaoya softly. He couldn't leave Xiaoya alone in the car. Now the car had turned off, and there was a snowstorm outside. If she fell asleep like this, she might really become a frozen beauty tomorrow. Little Ya, little Ya. Under Jiang Hai's voice, little Ya's brows slightly wrinkled. After about 10 seconds, she slowly opened her eyes. When she saw that it was Jiang Hai, she clearly breathed a sigh of relief. Then, she began to look around. Are we safe? Looking at the dark surroundings and the continuous wind blowing in, Xiaoya also felt a little numb. Not yet. We should be in the Contley family's orchard now. Now, we will go to their house to rest. After looking around, Jiang Hai said to Xiao Ya. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Xiao Ya nodded and was about to get up. However, she was stopped by Jiang Hai. He knew how hard he hit her just now. He had been resting for so long. Xiao Ya also needed to rest. Don't move first. Wake up. I will get food and weapons. I will open the door for you later. Now, Jiang Hai was a little relieved. When he saw that Xiao Ya did not eat, he deliberately took some food. Just like now, they were trapped outside. There was a considerable difference between having food and not having food. He picked up the food on his back and carried it on his back. Jiang Hai opened the door on his side and got out of the car. After looking around and confirming that there was indeed no danger nearby, he went to the back of the car. When he drove in China, there would be some things in the back of the car, let alone in the United States. Jiang Hai's current identity was also somewhat special, so a self-defense weapon was indispensable. Jiang Hai went to the back of the car and opened the back cover. He took out a box from under the back seat. Inside the box was his August, a handgun, and a satellite phone. They took this when they went into the mountains to burn guns. It was to prevent losing contact in such a situation. He first put the phone in his pocket, then took out the gun and tied it to his leg. Then, he picked up the gun and checked it. There was no problem. The 30 bullets in the magazine were also full. After checking that there was nothing wrong, Jiang Hai closed the back door. Walking to Xiao Ya's side of the car, Jiang Hai could not help but frown when he saw the situation here. The last deer should be an adult reindeer. This guy's strength was too great. Not only did it smash the car window, but because it was bulletproof, it did not explode. At the same time, it completely dented the car door. This damned fellow. I should have been the first one to bump into it. Recalling the existence of the Reindeer King, Jiang Hai also gritted his teeth with hatred. He forced the door open, and Xiao Ya inside was also shocked. After discovering that it was Jiang Hai, she slowly walked down and pulled Jiang Hai's arm. Obviously, she was very scared now. Let's go. Feeling her appearance, Jiang Hai stroked her hair and whispered to her. Then, he pulled her towards the distance. Humph, humph. But just after a few steps, suddenly, there were some strange sounds mixed in the snow behind them. The situation is not right. Jiang Hai, who was originally on high alert, immediately narrowed his eyes after hearing this sound. He knew that the situation was not right. He immediately picked up his gun and looked behind him. He did not have night vision, and there were no stars or moon tonight. The blizzard was still blowing, but it did not prevent him from feeling these differences. Since he had the Dragon Balls, his perception of danger was obviously different from before. Now, he felt that the crisis was coming and felt that something was wrong. Jiang Hai picked up Xiao Ya and let her grab his clothes, then slowly walked back. Jiang Hai held the gun, picked up his phone, turned on the flashlight function, and tied it to the gun. Although there was a flashlight, the visibility was not very high, but it was better than being blind. Jiang Hai looked around vigilantly, and along with the sound of humming, the sound of hooves moving forward in the snow also passed into Jiang Hai's ears. In Jiang Hai's eyes, 4 reindeer came up from the bottom of the distant hillside. Who the F***ck? Looking at the 4 male reindeer in front of him, Jiang Hai secretly cursed. These guys are really haunting me. When Jiang Hai saw the reindeer also saw Jiang Hai. When enemies meet, their eyes turn red. Without saying anything, the reindeer on this side had already begun to charge. Papa! 2 consecutive sounds were heard. Jiang Hai's August fired 2 bullets. He had no choice. He was not an automatic rifle. He could not pull the trigger and fire the bullets. He could only pull it one by one. This was also the significance of American civilian firearms. Without automatic, there was no continuous fire. Without continuous fire, Jiang Hai could only pull it one by one. The 2 bullets rotated and drilled into the heads of the 2 reindeer. In an instant, the 2 reindeer were dead, but at this moment, the other 2 reindeer had already charged over. The sharp horns on the top of their heads had already lowered, and they directly stabbed at Jiang Hai's body. Chapter 654. Get down. Seeing that the other deer's horn was about to stab into his body, Jiang Hai shouted. Of course, this shout was for little Ya, who was already dumbfounded behind him. The two of them almost rushed to the ground at the same time. The thick snow instantly covered the two of them, but it was precisely because of this that the other deer's horn did not hook Jiang Hai's intestines out. You be careful. Seeing the two deer quickly flying over his head, Jiang Hai shouted. Then he raised the gun in his hand and looked at the largest male deer. Without saying anything, he pulled the trigger directly. A crisp sound was heard. This male deer was not an ordinary existence. In such a critical moment, it actually forced itself to jump up. The attack that was originally aimed at its head only hit its butt. Then this guy moaned and quickly flashed into the nearby orchard. When Jiang Hai wanted to aim again, he could no longer find the other deer's figure. After all, the range of the mobile phone's flashlight was limited. But the other male deer was not so lucky. After hearing this sound, it wanted to escape, but Jiang Hai did not give it a chance. He went up and shot directly at the male deer's neck. The huge impact sent the male deer flying. It fell into the snow and did not make a sound. Seeing this scene, Jiang Hai could not help but let out a sigh of relief. He walked to little Ya's side and pulled her up again. As a result, he found that little Ya's body was covered in snow from head to toe. Let's go. After patting her, Jiang Hai took little Ya and walked toward the blurry small house in the distance. In fact, they were not very far from the small house, but after all, it was now a snowstorm. When Jiang Hai and the others walked over, it took almost half an hour. It could be said that it was really not an easy thing. When they walked to the front of the house, Jiang Hai deliberately shouted a few times because in the United States, it was easy to cause a conflict by simply breaking into the other party's territory. After all, this was someone else's orchard. Jiang Hai did not know if there was anyone here. After confirming that there was no one, Jiang Hai walked into the small house. Because the door was locked from the inside, Jiang Hai had to shoot the door lock before opening the door and walking in. As soon as he walked in, Jiang Hai could not help but let out a sigh of relief. Finally, they were temporarily safe. With the light of the mobile phone, he glanced at the small house in front of him. This small house was indeed not big, about 10 square meters or so. There were only a few things inside, which could be seen at a glance. It was not a small bed, but at this time, there was no quilt or anything like that on the bed. It seemed that it was winter, and the Cantrell family was not going to stay here overnight. Opposite the bed, there was a fireplace. Other than that, there was nothing else, not even a table or chair. If one had to point out something, it would be the many pieces of wood that were pushed around the corner of the wall. It seems that we are going to spend the night here. Looking at the things in front of him, Jiang Hai said to little Ya helplessly. Yeah, chew. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, little Ya also sighed and said helplessly. But just after she finished speaking, she sneezed. Hearing her voice, Jiang Hai turned to look at her and found that many places on little Ya's body were wet. Your clothes are wet. It is so cold now. If you wear wet clothes, you will get sick. I have to find a way to start the fire. Then, you should change into the dry clothes in the backpack first. After thinking about it, Jiang Hai said to little Ya. That one. Okay. Fortunately, she just went to mend her clothes, otherwise, there would be nothing dry now. Feeling in the dark, little Ya walked to the corner of the room. She blushed and began to change her clothes. Because the clothes were very tight, there was no way to wear other clothes inside. She could only wear a singlet and underpants. Now that she had to change, it was naturally the same. Fortunately, it was Jiang Hai in the room, otherwise, she would be really embarrassed. However, at this time, Jiang Hai had no time to care about this because he was studying the problem of how to start the fire. Jiang Hai did not smoke, and this room was obviously cleaned up. It was a wooden house. If there were cigarettes or flints in it, it might burn one day. Therefore, the family did not leave any flints, magnesium sticks, or other things that could start a fire. What should I do? Drill wood to start a fire? Scratching his head, Jiang Hai began to try to recall the problem of how to start a fire. It seems that in the early days, Belle taught me. After thinking about it, Jiang Hai decided to give it a try. He first squatted down and took off his shoes. Although the smell was not very good, he had to use his own shoelaces. Drilling wood to start a fire, to put it bluntly, was constant friction to generate heat, and then the ashes on the wood would emit too high a temperature, thus igniting a fire. Drilling wood to start a fire was the same as using shoelaces. Jiang Hai had only heard of it before, but he really did not try it. But now, he had to give it a try. First, he untied his shoelaces, then found half of a relatively flat piece of wood. Then, he used a knife to carve a line here. Then, he used the toilet paper in his pocket as tinder, ready to try it. But unfortunately, it turned out that this was not a desirable method. Perhaps those experts could be promoted, but he could not. After working for half an hour, there was a burnt smell on the shoelaces, but not to mention a fire, not even a spark could be seen. This is troublesome. Looking at the situation in front of him, Jiang Hai said with some helplessness. That, Jiang Hai, maybe I have a way to start a fire. Just as Jiang Hai was depressed here, little Ya, who had already changed her clothes and was sitting on the wooden bed, couldn't help but whisper. Hearing her voice, Jiang Hai looked at her strangely. There is gunpowder in the bullets in your gun, and there is gasoline in the car. You just need to use the gunpowder to ignite the gasoline outside. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai was stunned for a moment, then he patted his head. He was really too stupid. There was gasoline and a pistol. What was there to worry about? You wait here for a while. I will be back soon. Patting little Ya's shoulder, Jiang Hai quickly ran out of the room and ran in the direction of his car. When he acted on his own, his speed was much faster. When he and little Ya ran over, it took almost half an hour, and it only took him less than 20 minutes to run back and forth. When he finished taking the gasoline, he also took back the signal flare. He poured the gasoline on the wood and threw it into the fireplace. Then, he fired a signal flare at the wood. There was only a bang, and the entire fireplace was about to burn, but fortunately, it was still within a controllable range. Needless to say, it was clear that this was because Jiang Hai poured too much gasoline, but it really scared him and little Ya. Originally, he thought that if it really burst out, he and little Ya would immediately run out. The house burning was not a joke. But fortunately, the owner of this wooden house might have considered this, so the fireplace of this wooden house was still very good. Looking at the fire that was indeed in the fireplace, Jiang Hai went out to take a look. After seeing that the flue was indeed smoking, he couldn't help but walk in and let out a long breath. The fire was finally lit. After tightening the door with iron wire, Jiang Hai also took out his phone and called home. He told them that he and little Ya were fine, but they would probably have to wait until tomorrow to go back. After learning that the two of them were fine, Bernice and the others finally felt relieved. One must know that when Jiang Hai didn't come back, they were extremely anxious. Sure enough, as they thought, Jiang Hai really had an accident. But fortunately, the matter was not very serious. At least, Jiang Hai could still control it. You must be hungry. After I heat up these things, let's eat. After making the call and reporting that they were safe, Jiang Hai picked up the food in the backpack, but unfortunately, it didn't last for so long. The originally delicious food was as hard as iron at this time. With a helpless smile, Jiang Hai said to little Ya who was sitting on the bed. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, little Ya couldn't help but raise her head and look at Jiang Hai. But Jiang Hai found that her condition was not very good. He walked over and touched her forehead. He found that little Ya's forehead was somewhat hot, but it was not particularly serious. It was understandable. After all, she was busy for a day and had not eaten. Later, she encountered this incident. First, she was frightened. Then she fell into the snow. Then, because her clothes were wet and she changed into such thin clothes, she was frozen for almost an hour. Now, although the fire was rising, her body might not be able to hold on if it wasn't for Jiang Hai wasting a lot of spiritual energy a while ago, let alone just a low fever. Little Ya, cheer up. Let's eat something and then go to sleep. Looking at her appearance, Jiang Hai stroked her hair and whispered. N. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, little Ya was like a kitten. She didn't have anything to say. She just made a soft sound. Looking at her, Jiang Hai first took off his coat and spread it on the cold bed. Then, he let little Ya lie here first. Then he took off his sweater and covered her body. He only wore a thin sweater and squatted in front of the fireplace to roast the meat. Fortunately, the meat was cooked quickly. After all, it was cooked before. He just needed to reheat it. After the meat was roasted, Jiang Hai used a knife to slice the meat and fed it to little Ya. After eating some things, little Ya felt a lot better. During the time when Jiang Hai was busy, little Ya's coat had also dried. He took it off and covered little Ya's body again. Xiaoya fell asleep very quickly with a warm bed and a full body. Coupled with the shock and exhaustion, Xiaoya quickly fell asleep. When she got up again, she looked at her phone. It was already past 3 o'clock in the morning. After sleeping by the fire, she felt much better. At least her head wasn't as hot as before. However, it was inevitable that she would be thirsty if she continued to roast like this. When she opened her eyes to look for water, she found Jiang Hai sitting by her bed and looking at the fire in front of him. From time to time, he would throw a piece of wood or stir the flames. Seeing this scene, little Ya couldn't help but feel warm in her heart. At the same time, she also felt extremely safe. "En, you're up. Do you feel better?" Looking at him, little Ya couldn't help but move her body gently. But this soft sound made Jiang Hai look over instantly. When he saw that little Ya had opened her eyes again, Jiang Hai immediately stood up and said with a smile, "En, I feel much better, but do you have water?" Hearing Jiang Hai's words, little Ya nodded, but after hesitating, she said to Jiang Hai. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai immediately handed over the kettle next to him. He just went to the car to get this kettle when little Ya was asleep. Usually, he really didn't notice that the things in his car were quite incomplete. Generally speaking, first aid kits, light sticks and so on. These things that were used in the wild, Jiang Hai didn't have them. Jiang Hai had already decided that after this incident, when he went to repair the car, he would buy these things on the way. It was better to be safe than sorry. Otherwise, if he encountered such a situation next time, he would be caught unprepared. He brought back the kettle. As for the water inside, naturally, it couldn't be stored in the kettle, but the snow outside. This was fresh water. And it was very clean. After Jiang Hai put some in, he boiled the water and could drink it directly. As for the current situation, it was quite good. After drinking some water, little Ya was more energetic. Looking at Jiang Hai, who was still wearing thin clothes, little Ya pulled Jiang Hai's hand. "Come, you also get on the bed. It's cold to sit there." Looking at Jiang Hai, little Ya said with a serious face, "It's okay. You don't know how strong my body is." Touching his head, Jiang Hai rejected little Ya's kindness. I have to admit that although there are many people who say that the women around Jiang Hai like him because of his money, it's not that simple. To be honest, apart from money, it was really difficult for Jiang Hai to have the ability to attract other people's attention in an instant. He was indeed a bit unromantic. For example, right now, this was something that only a person who was prepared to be single for 10,000 years would say. Rolling her eyes at Jiang Hai, little Ya didn't let him sit back down. Instead, she forced him to sit on the bed. Then she gave half of her coat to Jiang Hai, but this coat was still very small. Unknowingly, the two were squeezed together. Chapter 655. "Hey Jiang Hai, how long have I been in your house?" Xiaoya lowered her head and leaned against Jiang Hai. Listening to Jiang Hai's breathing, the atmosphere between the two of them became subtle. Xiaoya hugged her knees and asked Jiang Hai. Perhaps it was to ease the awkwardness between them. "Oh, I remember that you have been here for half a year." Hearing what Xiaoya said, Jiang Hai also recovered from the slightly ambiguous atmosphere. After thinking for a while, Jiang Hai said to Xiaoya. He remembered that the first time he saw Xiaoya should be in early June. At that time, he and Aphrodite still had a pure relationship, and he and Bernice only had a pure cooperative relationship. When Xiaoya came here, he was somewhat unhappy in his heart, but because he agreed, he accepted the two sisters. But he didn't expect that they had been together for more than half a year. The relationship between the two had surpassed the relationship of ordinary friends. As for what would develop, no one knew. "Yes, I have been here for half a year, but Jiang Hai, these 6 months have been the happiest I have ever been. I used to just stay in a pure white room alone, either cooking or reading. I had nothing else to do. I couldn't watch TV because TV has radiation, I couldn't play computer games, I couldn't come into contact with the outside world. In that world, only my sister and mother could talk to me, but after coming to the United States, only my sister could talk to me. Listening to Zhang Hai's words, Xiaoya rested her head on her knees and said with some sadness. Hearing her words, Zhang Hai felt the overwhelming loneliness. After hesitating for a moment, Zhang Hai put his hand on Xiaoya's back and whispered, "Don't worry, you don't need to think about these things when you come to me. As long as you don't leave, my place will always be your home." You really don't know how to comfort people. Xiaoya glared at Zhang Hai, turned around, picked up Zhang Hai's big hand, and moved it from her back to her shoulder. Then her body leaned into Zhang Hai's arms and they sat there together, looking at the fire in front of them. Now we are like a couple, leaning together and looking at the fire. After a while, when Zhang Hai felt that his arm was a little numb, Xiaoya suddenly said. This made Zhang Hai, who originally wanted to stretch his arm, give up the idea again. But after hearing what Xiaoya said, Zhang Hai was a little embarrassed. What the hell is this? Ahem. This is only temporary. When the snow stops, we can go back. With a dry cough, Zhang Hai said with a slight panic. I know we will go back when the time comes, but at this time, I really hope that we are really a couple. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Xiaoya's voice was a little disappointed. Then, she seemed to have thought of something. As she spoke, she raised her head and looked at Zhang Hai. Her small face also turned red at this time. Seeing her appearance, Zhang Hai opened his mouth, but he really didn't know what to say. Zhang Hai, I know about the matter between you and my sister. Can you give my sister the ending she wants? Looking at Zhang Hai, Xiaoya looked at him with a serious face. Hearing her words, Zhang Hai's heart skipped a beat. It had only been a few days since the incident between him and Bernice, and it was discovered by Xiaoya. Sure enough, the paper couldn't wrap the fire. And her question really made Zhang Hai unable to answer. This. Looking at Xiaoya, Zhang Hai's eyes were a little hesitant because he didn't know what to say. You can't, I'll answer for you. Then on the basis that you can't, do you mind adding one more person? Looking at Zhang Hai's somewhat evasive gaze, Xiaoya suddenly sat up and directly sat on Zhang Hai's body. Her pair of eyes reflected the fiery red flames as she stared at Zhang Hai. Although the north wind was whistling outside, a layer of fine sweat appeared on Zhang Hai's forehead at this time. Okay, Xiaoya, don't make a fuss. You're still sick. Stroking Xiaoya's shoulder, Zhang Hai wanted to stand up. Was he born to be pushed down? If that's the case, I'm too miserable. I'm very good now, so. However, Xiaoya slapped away Zhang Hai's hand, gently bit her lips, and suddenly threw herself into Zhang Hai's arms. He had to admit that Xiaoya and Bernice were indeed sisters. Even the way they threw themselves over was similar. Although Xiaoya was small in size, her strength wasn't small. Zhang Hai was afraid that he would hurt her. After struggling for a long time, he lifted Xiaoya up. Looking at the panting Xiaoya in front of him, Zhang Hai immediately stopped her from throwing herself over. You have to think about it. I may not be able to give you anything. Seeing that Xiaoya was about to throw herself over, Zhang Hai immediately said to her, I don't need you to give me anything. Now, give me your child. Looking at Zhang Hai, Xiaoya took off the Ice Queen's clothes from the top. Instantly, Xiaoya's abnormally white and tender body directly appeared in Zhang Hai's line of sight. Compared to other people, her body was much more slender, and her upper body wasn't very plump, but it revealed an unusually cute feeling. It made people want to hold her in their arms and love her. Looking at Zhang Hai's gaze, Xiaoya couldn't help but chuckle. Sure enough, she was also attractive to Zhang Hai. Today I'm yours. Lying on Zhang Hai's body, Xiaoya said softly, and then kissed Zhang Hai's lips again. Outside, the north wind whistled. In this small wooden house, the atmosphere was a little breathless. In the end, Zhang Hai and Xiaoya broke through the bottom line and went crazy in the small wooden house. Outside, the snow kept falling. Zhang Hai and the others were also trapped in this small wooden house. Fortunately, Zhang Hai and the others brought a lot of food. It snowed for 2 days and 2 nights, and it stopped on the night of the 27th. However, Zhang Hai and the others still spent another night in this small wooden house before returning to the manor. Of course, they couldn't drive their car, and they didn't call anyone to pick them up. This was because the small wooden house they were in was less than an hour away from Zhang Hai's manor. Moreover, the The snow here was too thick for a car to pass through. Zhang Hai and Lilia walked back. It was an hour's journey, but they walked for nearly 2 hours. It wasn't until noon on the 28th that they returned to the manor. When they returned to the manor and saw the situation inside, Zhang Hai couldn't help but feel angry. These deers were really abominable. Not only did they attack him, but they also destroyed his fence. It's great that you're fine. Promise me, don't go missing again in the future. As soon as they entered the manor, Bernice and the others noticed Zhang Hai and Xiao Ya. Bernice didn't say anything and directly hugged her younger sister. She couldn't stop her tears from flowing down. These 2 days, she was worried sick. If it weren't for Zhang Hai's call, she might have gone crazy. Fortunately, nothing happened in the end. If something really happened, she might not be able to forgive herself for the rest of her life. Well, sister, I'm fine. Don't worry, this kind of thing won't happen in the future. Xiaoya glanced at Zhang Hai and said to Bernice. However, her tone wasn't that confident. But at this time, Zhang Hai couldn't say anything. After hugging Delina and the others, he went to find Robbins Garcia. Boss, you're finally back. Looking at Zhang Hai, Robbins Garcia also hugged Zhang Hai. He was very worried that something would happen to Zhang Hai. After knowing that Zhang Hai was fine, he was relieved. Okay, Robbins Garcia, I won't die so easily. Is the manor's loss big this time? Is everyone okay? Looking at the slightly agitated Robbins Garcia, Zhang Hai smiled, then looked at his own manor. From his perspective, the situation didn't seem to be too good. Not bad. We came back in time, and nobody was hurt, although we were stuck at home for a few days. As for the damage to the manor, a lot of the fences were damaged. Because of the heavy snow, the deer didn't stay here for too long and left after only 1 day. The cows were a little frightened, but it was still manageable. The fodder storage was very tight, so it wasn't stolen. However, it'll cost tens of thousands of dollars to repair the fences. Robbins Garcia looked at the damaged fence in the distance and said helplessly. These fences were usually electrified to prevent wild animals from entering. But when it was raining or snowing, it couldn't be electrified because children knew that water was conductive. If the fences were electrified when it was snowing or raining, it was very likely to burn the power in the manor. When the time came, the entire manor would be without electricity, and that would be troublesome. Most importantly, if there was a fire, it would be even more troublesome. Because of this, the fences weren't electrified when it was snowing, and these deer took advantage of the fact that the fences weren't electrified to rush in. This is just a small amount of money. It'll be fine if it's repaired soon. Looking at the messy manor, Zhang Hai frowned. Also, Mayor Wallace called last night and said that the town is organizing a deer hunt to chase these guys back into the mountains. He asked if we'd like to participate. After thinking for a while, Robbins Garcia brought up the second matter to Zhang Hai. Participate, of course, participate. Zhang Hai wouldn't forget that he was almost killed by those deer. It wasn't his principle to not take revenge. Hearing Zhang Hai's words and seeing the small flames in his eyes, Robbins Garcia laughed. He knew that Zhang Hai would definitely take revenge. After being made so miserable, if he still didn't take revenge, then he wouldn't be Zhang Hai. If you participate, we'll leave after lunch. We'll go to town and hunt deer according to our assigned quota. Robbins Garcia looked at Zhang Hai and said seriously. Hearing his words, Zhang Hai nodded. He had to participate no matter what. After returning to the villa, Zhang Hai had a good meal with his family and left them to look after the house. Because the purse seine was broken, Zhang Hai deliberately left Azalina at home just in case. He took Belle Lester, Connerson Peters, the 2 boys from the Philemon family, Louis Turner, and John Turner, and drove his F-650 to town with a Remington shotgun. His men had already called the car repair company, and the car repair company would find a way to take the car away and repair it. When they arrived in town, Zhang Hai found that there were some signs of deer activity in the town. Many people's fences were broken, which showed that these deer were really not kind people. But this year's deer disaster didn't cause too much loss. No one was injured, and that was the most important thing. As for the broken things, the government would subsidize them, so they weren't worried about that. So when Zhang Hai arrived, the atmosphere was quite good. Seeing that Zhang Hai had also come, Mayor Wallace knew that Zhang Hai had been missing for 3 days. After asking and confirming that Jiang Hai was fine, he was relieved. After assigning the people, everyone headed out of town. Mayor Wallace was still very conservative. He divided the people in town who were going out to hunt deer into 3 cars. For example, there were 5 people in Jiang Hai's group, plus a car belonging to a pair of brothers, a total of 3 people. One of them had an 18-year-old child, and there were 4 policemen in a police car. After all, it was illegal to hunt wild animals in the United States. So they needed to record the process of this deer hunt. At least, they couldn't chase the deer into the forest. And most importantly, the weapons also needed to be recorded. For example, Jiang Hai's August couldn't be used. He could only use a shotgun. As soon as they left town, Jiang Hai and the others saw a group of deer. But these deer were different from the hundreds of deer that night. This was just a small group. It looked like there were only 5 or 6 of them. They were digging in the snow outside the town, looking for food to eat. They were very far away, so Jiang Hai picked up the gun. He was ready to send these guys to heaven when they were in range. But these deer were extremely sneaky. As soon as they heard the sound of the engine, a deer instantly raised its head. Then, without making any sound, it jumped in an instant and ran away. As it ran, the other deer also ran away in an instant. It had been snowing for 2 days and 2 nights. In addition, the snow had been exposed to the air for the whole night last night and the whole afternoon this morning. The snow was really not good for driving, especially the snow that had been crushed by the car. It had turned into slush, but the deer could handle it freely in such weather. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.